Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to Fiction Blue, your story destination. We have an absolute treat for you today. What if Harry was rescued by Remus Lupin at age 6 and they used marauder pranks to terrify the Dursleys? If you're enjoying these stories, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps the stories coming. With that said, let the adventure begin. Chapter 1, The Boy Under the Stairs. The dream always started the same way. Remus Lupin found himself standing in the ruins of the cottage in Godric's Hollow, cold October air biting at his skin while rain soaked through his threadbare coat. James and Lily lay before him, their bodies untouched but unmistakably empty of life. And then came the sound that tore at his heart, a child crying, somewhere in the wreckage. Harry, he would call, frantically pushing aside broken beams and shattered glass. Harry, I'm coming. But no matter how desperately he searched, the crying only grew more distant, fading until it was barely audible at all. Remus woke with a gasp, his heart racing. Pale moonlight filtered through the curtains of his small, dilapidated cottage. 5 years. It had been 5 years since that terrible night, and still the dreams came. He pressed the heels of his palms against his eyes, trying to push away the images. Enough, he muttered, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. The wooden floor was cold beneath his bare feet. His small cottage in Yorkshire was nothing impressive, a single bedroom, a cramped kitchen, and a sitting room with books stacked in precarious towers against the walls. But it was shelter, and after years of drifting, it was the closest thing to home he had. The kettle whistled softly as Remus leaned against the kitchen counter, staring out the window at the waning gibbous moon. 3 days since the last full moon, and his body still ached from the transformation. He poured hot water over a tea bag, watching the water darken. But something felt different tonight. The dream had shifted, changed in subtle ways he couldn't quite articulate. Harry's cries hadn't faded completely. Instead, they had transformed into something more desperate, more immediate. It wasn't memory anymore, it felt like a call. Don't be ridiculous, Remus told himself, taking a sip of tea. He's safe with Lily's sister. Dumbledore assured everyone of that. Yet as dawn approached, Remus couldn't shake the feeling. He'd respected Dumbledore's decision to place Harry with his relatives, though it had nearly broken him. What could a werewolf offer a child? No stability, no security. A monster for a guardian. But what if something was wrong? By mid-morning, Remus had made his decision. He would go to Surrey, just to check. One glimpse to reassure himself that Harry was well, and then he would return to his solitary existence. He wouldn't interfere. He wouldn't approach the boy. Just a quick look, that was all. He apparat to a quiet alley several streets from Privet Drive. It had been years since he'd visited this rigidly ordinary suburb, back when he, Sirius, and James had followed Lily to her sister's wedding. The memory of Sirius sent a stab of betrayal through him. 5 years hadn't dulled that particular pain. Privet Drive was eerily identical to how he remembered it, immaculate lawns, identical houses, the suffocating sense of conformity. Number 4 stood like all the others, unremarkable except for the knowledge of who lived within. Remus lingered across the street, hands in the pockets of his shabby coat, trying to look like he had a reason to be there. A 6-year-old boy should be visible, playing in the garden, looking out windows. But there was no sign of Harry. Instead, a large, beefy man emerged from the house, followed by a woman with a long neck and pinched face. Between them waddled a round blonde boy who appeared to be about Harry's age. Vernon and Petunia Dursley, with their son. But no Harry. Now, Dudders, Mummy and Daddy will be back from shopping in time for lunch, Petunia was saying as she fussed over the boy's coat. Mrs. Fig will be over in a moment to watch you. Don't want Mrs. Fig, the boy whined. She smells like cabbage and cats. Now, son, Vernon said, puffing out his chest, be a man about it. When we return, we'll bring you that new remote-controlled car you've been wanting. The boy's tantrum instantly transformed into a calculated smile. The one with the siren noises? The very same, Vernon assured him. Remus watched as they bundled the boy back inside, then climbed into their car and drove away. Where was Harry? A cold feeling settled in his stomach. Something was wrong. He waited, watching as an elderly woman he presumed to be Mrs. Figg hobbled up the drive and disappeared inside. After 30 minutes passed, Remus made his decision. Using a subtle disillusionment charm, he approached the house, moving carefully around to the back garden. Through the kitchen window, he could see the large boy sitting at the table, devouring what appeared to be a sizable chocolate cake while Mrs. Figg dozed in an armchair. Still no sign of Harry. Remus circled the house, peering through windows. A living room with expensive-looking furniture. A pristine dining room. Upstairs, a master bedroom, a room overflowing with toys, a guest room, no small dark-haired boy anywhere. Confusion gave way to genuine concern. Had Dumbledore moved Harry? Had something happened to him? Or was he simply out with friends? Remus hesitated at the back door, weighing his options. Breaking into a Muggle home wasn't something he took lightly, but his unease was growing by the minute. With a whispered "Alohomora," the door unlocked with a soft click. He slipped inside, keeping the disillusionment charm active. The house was unnaturally clean, everything in its proper place. Family photographs covered the walls and mantelpiece, the Dursley boy at various ages, Vernon and Petunia on holidays, at Christmas, at family gatherings. But not a single photograph of Harry. Remus moved silently through the ground floor, avoiding the kitchen where Mrs. Figg and the Dursley boy remained. No sign of a second child living here. No toys that wouldn't belong to the blonde boy, no small shoes by the door, no drawing stuck to the refrigerator signed with Harry's name. He was about to head upstairs when he passed the cupboard under the stairs. A small sound, so faint he almost missed it, made him pause. A shuffle, perhaps, or a sigh. Remus stood frozen, listening. There it was again. Movement inside the cupboard. With growing dread, Remus tapped the small padlock on the outside of the cupboard door. "Alohomora," he whispered again, and it fell open in his palm. The smell hit him first, the unmistakable sourness of a space too small, too confined, housing a human body for too long. The cupboard was dark, but Remus could make out a small mattress on the floor, a thin blanket, and a few broken toys lined up carefully on a shelf. And there, huddled in the corner, was a small boy with untidy black hair and startlingly green eyes, Lily's eyes. He wore clothes several sizes too large for his thin frame, the sleeves rolled up multiple times to free his hands. Round glasses held together with tape perched on his nose. And on his forehead, partially obscured by his fringe, was the lightning bolt scar. "Harry," Remus breathed, the disillusionment charm failing as his concentration shattered. The boy pressed himself further into the corner, fear evident in every line of his body. "Who are you?" he whispered. "How do you know my name?" Remus dropped to his knees, making himself smaller, less threatening. "My name is Remus Lupin. I was a friend of your parents." Harry's eyes widened slightly, but the wariness remained. "My parents died in a car crash." "A car crash?" Remus couldn't keep the shock from his voice. "Is that what they told you?" Harry nodded cautiously. "Uncle Vernon says they were drunk. That's how I got this." He pushed his hair back, revealing the scar more fully. Fury like Remus had rarely experienced coursed through him. These people had not only locked a child in a cupboard, they had lied to him about his own history, his parents' sacrifice. "Harry," he said gently, fighting to keep his voice steady, "would you like to hear the truth about your parents?" A flicker of something, hope, perhaps, crossed the boy's face. "You really knew them?" "I was one of your father's best friends." "And your mother?" Remus smiled sadly. "Lily was one of the kindest, bravest people I've ever known." Harry inched forward slightly. "What were their names?" he asked, and the question broke something in Remus's heart. This child didn't even know his parents' names. James and Lily Potter, Remus said softly. And they loved you more than anything in this world. A commotion from the kitchen interrupted them, the sound of a chair scraping, Mrs. Figg's voice calling for the Dursley boy. Harry's face filled with panic. You have to go, he whispered urgently. If Aunt Petunia finds you here, I'm not leaving you here, Remus said firmly. Not in this cupboard. Not with these people. Harry looked bewildered. But where would I go? With me, Remus said before he could think better of it. The word surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Harry. This wasn't the plan. One glimpse to reassure himself, that's all it was supposed to be. But how could he walk away now? You want me to come with you? Harry asked, his voice small and disbelieving. But Uncle Vernon says nobody wants me. That's why they took me in, because nobody else would. Something in Remus snapped. The fear, the resignation in the child's voice, it was too much. Harry, he said, his voice low and intense, your aunt and uncle have lied to you. About everything. There are many people who would be honored to have you in their lives. I would be honored. He hesitated, then added, I know this is sudden, and I'm a stranger to you. But I promise you, I mean you no harm. I only want to help. Harry studied him for a long moment. Then, with the clear-eyed perception children sometimes possess, he asked, Are you magic too? Remus blinked. What makes you ask that? Sometimes, things happen around me. When I'm scared or angry. Aunt Petunia calls it my freakishness. He looked down at his hands. Are you a freak like me? You're not a freak, Harry, Remus said, his voice gentle but firm. You're a wizard. Just like your father was. Just like I am. And your mother was a witch, the most talented witch of our year at school. Harry's eyes went wide. Magic is real, he whispered. Uncle Vernon says there's no such thing as magic. He gets very angry if I mention anything unusual. Remus pulled out his wand, glancing toward the kitchen to ensure they weren't about to be interrupted. With a simple flick, he conjured a small, glowing blue orb that floated between them, casting soft light in the cramped cupboard. Harry gasped, reaching out a tentative finger to touch it. The light danced around his hand, leaving trails of sparks. That's just a small example, Remus said, smiling at the wonder on Harry's face. There's so much more. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the moment. Harry's face instantly transformed back to fear. They're home early, he whispered. You have to hide. Remus made a split-second decision. I'm not hiding, Harry. And neither are you, not anymore. He held out his hand. Do you trust me? Just enough to come with me, to hear the full truth about your parents, about yourself? If you decide you want to return, I promise I'll bring you back. Harry hesitated, looking at the offered hand. I won't force you, Remus added softly. It must be your choice. The sound of car doors slamming, of voices approaching the front door, seemed to make up Harry's mind. He reached out and placed his small hand in Remus's. I want to know about my parents, he said with unexpected determination. I want to know the truth. Remus helped Harry out of the cupboard, rage threatening to overwhelm him again at how small the boy was, how the cupboard had been his prison. The front door opened, and Petunia Dursley's voice called out. Dutters, we're home. Look what Mummy's brought you. Remus flicked his wand, reapplying the disillusionment charm over both of them. Harry gasped as his body seemed to disappear. We're invisible, Remus whispered. Stay close to me. They moved toward the back door, but not quickly enough. Vernon Dursley's bulky frame appeared in the hallway, blocking their path. Petunia, he called, the freak's cupboard is open. Did you let him out? No, came her sharp reply. He's supposed to stay in there until he finishes those chores from yesterday. Vernon stomped toward the cupboard, his face purpling as he discovered it empty. Boy, he bellowed. Where are you? Harry flinched against Remus, who tightened his grip on the child's hand reassuringly. Mrs. Fig. Vernon shouted, marching toward the kitchen. Where is the boy? Did you let him out? What? No, I've been watching Dudley, came the confused reply. The other boy was in his cupboard when I arrived. I assumed that's where he was meant to be. Petunia appeared in the hallway, her face pale. He's gone. He can't be gone. What about the protection? What about the... She stopped herself, glancing nervously at Mrs. Fig, who was now peering curiously from the kitchen doorway. Search the house, Vernon ordered. He's hiding somewhere, playing one of his abnormal tricks. As the Dursleys began a frantic search, Remus guided Harry toward the back door. They slipped outside and made their way to the edge of the property. We need to move quickly now, Remus whispered. I'm going to take you somewhere safe, but the way we travel might feel strange. I need you to hold on to me very tightly and close your eyes. Harry nodded, wrapping his arms around Remus's waist. Remus checked to ensure no one was watching, then disapparated, taking Harry away from Privet Drive. They reappeared in a small clearing in a forest, near Remus's cottage. Harry stumbled, looking distinctly green. I feel sick, he mumbled, bending over. That's normal the first time, Remus assured him, rubbing his back gently. It's called apparition, magical transportation. The feeling will pass in a moment. As Harry recovered, Remus removed the disillusionment charm and led him toward the cottage. It was a humble structure, with a thatched roof and stone walls covered in ivy. Smoke curled from the chimney, a warming charm having kept the fire going during his absence. This is your house? Harry asked, looking around with curiosity rather than judgment. It is, Remus said, suddenly self-conscious of the building's run-down appearance. It's not much, but it's home. It's brilliant, Harry said with such genuine appreciation that Remus felt a lump form in his throat. Inside, the cottage was clean but sparse. Books were the most abundant possession, stacked on tables, lining the walls on makeshift shelves. A comfortable but worn sofa faced the fireplace, and a small kitchen occupied one corner. Are you hungry? Remus asked, realizing he had no idea when the boy had last eaten. Harry nodded hesitantly, as if unsure whether he was allowed to admit hunger. Right then. Sit down, and we'll have something to eat while we talk. Remus gestured to the small table near the kitchen. I'm afraid I don't have much that would appeal to a 6-year-old. I'm used to not being picky, Harry said matter-of-factly, and Remus felt that surge of anger again. He put together sandwiches, simple but filling, and set a plate in front of Harry along with a glass of milk. The boy waited until Remus nodded permission before starting to eat, taking small, careful bites as if afraid the food might be taken away. Harry, Remus said gently, you can eat as much as you like, as quickly as you like. There's more if you're still hungry afterward. The boy looked up in surprise, then began eating with more enthusiasm. When he finished, Remus offered another sandwich, which Harry accepted with wide eyes. Now, Remus said, once Harry had eaten his fill, I promised you the truth about your parents. But first, I need to know, what exactly did your aunt and uncle tell you about them? Harry shrugged. Not much. That they were no good, that my dad was unemployed, that they died in a car crash because they were drunk. Aunt Petunia says my mum was a freak like me, and that's where I got it from. Remus took a deep breath, controlling his temper. Everything they told you was a lie, Harry. Your father came from a wealthy, respected wizarding family. He was brave, loyal, and yes, sometimes a bit mischievous. Your mother was brilliant, top of our class in many subjects. They weren't unemployed, they were fighting in a war. A war? Harry's eyes widened. Yes. There was a dark wizard, the most dangerous, evil wizard of our time. His name was Voldemort, though most people are too frightened to say it aloud. He and his followers were terrorizing both the magical and non-magical worlds. Your parents fought against him. Is that how they really died? Harry asked quietly. Remus nodded, choosing his words carefully. Voldemort came after your family personally. He killed your parents when you were just a baby. But when he tried to kill you too, something extraordinary happened. His spell rebounded somehow. You survived with only that scar, and Voldemort was destroyed. Harry's hand went to his forehead, tracing the lightning bolt shape. This isn't from a car crash. No. It's a curse scar, from the most deadly curse known to wizard kind. You're the only person ever known to have survived it. That's why you're famous in our world, Harry. They call you the boy who lived. I'm famous. Harry looked bewildered. But nobody likes me. At school, Dudley stops anyone from being my friend. The teachers think I'm trouble. In the wizarding world, everyone knows your name, Remus explained. That's part of why Dumbledore, he's the headmaster of Hogwarts, the wizarding school, placed you with your Muggle relatives. Muggle? Non-magical people. He thought you would be safer growing up away from the fame, and there were magical protections he could place on your aunt's home because of her blood relationship to your mother. Harry considered this, his young face surprisingly thoughtful. But if I'm supposed to be there, won't people be looking for me now that I'm gone? Yes, Remus admitted. They likely will be, once they realize you're missing. Will you get in trouble? Harry asked, concern evident in his voice. For taking me? The question touched Remus deeply. After years of mistreatment, this child was worried about him. Possibly, he acknowledged. But I couldn't leave you there, not once I saw how they were treating you. No child deserves to be locked in a cupboard, Harry. No child deserves to be lied to about who they are, about who their parents were. What will happen now? It was the question Remus had been avoiding asking himself. He hadn't planned this. Taking Harry had been an impulse born of outrage and protective instinct. The wizarding world would indeed search for the boy, and there would be consequences. For tonight, you're safe here, Remus said. I'll prepare a proper bed for you, and tomorrow we can decide what comes next. But I promise you this, I will not send you back to that cupboard. Harry's eyes filled with tears, and to Remus's surprise, the boy launched himself forward, throwing his arms around Remus's waist. Thank you, he whispered. Remus hesitantly returned the embrace, feeling something long dormant stir in his heart. This was James and Lily's son, and he had been suffering all these years while Remus had kept his distance, believing Dumbledore's assurances. No more. Back at Privet Drive, chaos reigned. Vernon Dursley had called the police, reporting a kidnapping, though his description of events was carefully edited to make Harry sound like a beloved nephew who had been snatched from the garden while playing. Skinny fellow with light brown hair, Vernon was telling the officer. Shabby clothes. Suspicious character. I saw him lurking earlier but thought nothing of it. Petunia sat rigidly on the sofa, her face pale. This was a disaster beyond measure. She knew precisely what would happen when those freaks discovered the boy was missing. The protections would be gone. They would come. And come they did. As night fell and the police departed with promises to search the area, there was a sharp crack in the back garden. Petunia peered through the curtains to see a tall figure in sweeping robes approaching the back door. Vernon, she hissed. One of them is here. Vernon's face turned an interesting shade of puce. Tell him to go away. We've done our part, put up with the freak for years. Not our fault if someone took him. But there was no deterring Albus Dumbledore. The back door opened despite being locked, and the elderly wizard stepped into the Dursley home, his usually twinkling eyes grave. Where is Harry Potter? He asked without preamble. Kidnapped, Vernon blustered. Some vagrant took him. We've already informed the proper authorities, the real authorities, not your kind. Dumbledore's penetrating gaze moved from Vernon to Petunia. I placed wards around this home that should have prevented any magical person from entering without permission. Yet they have not been triggered, which suggests this was not a forced entry. His voice grew cooler. I need to see where Harry has been living. Vernon and Petunia exchanged panicked glances. Upstairs, Vernon attempted. Second bedroom on the right. Very comfortable. Best of everything. I think not, Dumbledore said softly. His eyes had found the cupboard under the stairs, its door hanging open, the small padlock on the floor nearby. He moved toward it, looking inside. The silence that followed was terrible. When Dumbledore straightened, there was an aura of power around him that made the Dursleys shrink back. You kept a child, Lily's child, in a cupboard? His voice was deceptively gentle. You locked him in. Now see here, Vernon began, but fell silent as Dumbledore raised a hand. I left Harry in your care because I believed the protection of blood magic, anchored in Lily's sacrifice, outweighed any discomfort he might experience growing up away from the wizarding world. The old wizard's voice was heavy with regret. I see now that I was gravely mistaken. The boy was always difficult, Petunia said shrilly. Unnatural things happened around him. We had to discipline him, keep him in line. He was a magical child showing accidental magic, as all magical children do, Dumbledore replied. And for this natural process, you punished him? Locked him away? Neither Dursley had a response to this. I must find Harry, Dumbledore said, more to himself than to the Dursleys. The magical protections here have already begun to fade with his departure. If whoever took him means him harm. It was a man, Petunia said suddenly. I didn't see him myself, but Vernon described him. Shabby clothes, scars on his face, light brown hair going grey though he wasn't old. Dumbledore went very still. Did this man have a name? The police are looking into it, Vernon said importantly. Probably some homeless person looking to ransom the boy. But Dumbledore wasn't listening anymore. He had a suspicion now, one that both relieved and concerned him. If Remus Lupin had taken Harry, the boy wasn't in danger from Death Eaters or those who would harm him. But it complicated matters immensely. With a swirl of his robes, Dumbledore turned to leave. Wait. Petunia called. What about our protection? You said we'd be safe as long as we kept the boy. Dumbledore paused at the door. I suggest you take a holiday, Mrs. Dursley. A long one, perhaps. And then he was gone. Harry woke disoriented, and used to the softness of a real bed. Remus had transfigured his sofa into a comfortable bed for the night, promising to properly prepare the small spare room today. Sunlight streamed through worn curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. For a moment, panic seized him. He was late making breakfast, Uncle Vernon would be furious, but then he remembered. He wasn't at Privet Drive anymore. He was with Mr. Lupin, who knew his parents, who said he was a wizard. The smell of cooking drew Harry from the bed. He padded into the main room to find Remus at the small stove, expertly flipping pancakes. Good morning, Harry, Remus said with a warm smile. I hope you slept well. Harry nodded, still slightly shy. Can I help? He offered automatically. You can set the table if you'd like. Plates are in that cupboard there. Remus pointed with his spatula. Harry carefully carried plates to the table, then added forks and knives at Remus's direction. It felt different from chores at the Dursleys, more like being included than being used. Breakfast was another revelation. Remus placed a stack of pancakes before him, along with butter, syrup, and sliced fruit. Harry hesitated again until Remus served himself and began eating. I've been thinking about our situation, Remus said as they ate. People will indeed be looking for you. Dumbledore has likely already discovered you're missing. Harry's stomach clenched with anxiety. Will he make me go back? Not if I can help it, Remus said firmly. But we need to be strategic. The first thing we should do is gather evidence of how the Dursleys treated you. Evidence. Memories, specifically, Remus explained. In the wizarding world, there are ways to preserve and view memories. If we can show what your life was truly like with the Dursleys, it will be harder for anyone to insist you return there. Harry looked thoughtful. Will it hurt? Getting the memories? Not at all, Remus assured him. It's a simple spell. But we'll need to visit someone who can help us with that. I don't have the necessary equipment here. He paused, considering. And perhaps, before Dumbledore finds us, we should pay one more visit to your relatives. Why? Harry asked, unable to hide his dismay. A smile that didn't quite reach Remus's eyes appeared. Well, your father and I, along with our friends, were known for something specific at school. We called ourselves the Marauders, and we were rather accomplished pranksters. Harry's eyes widened. Pranksters. Indeed. And I think it's only fair that the Dursleys experience a taste of the Marauder legacy. After all, you're the son of Prongs, that was your father's nickname, and they've treated his memory, and you, abominably. For the first time since Remus had met him, Harry grinned with genuine mischief. What kind of pranks? Remus's smile turned reminiscent. Your father was particularly talented at transfiguration, changing one thing into another. Sirius, another of our friends, favored more dramatic displays. And I was always rather good at charms that triggered at specific times or under specific conditions. Could you make Uncle Vernon's drill bits turn into worms when he tries to use them? Harry suggested, surprising Remus with both the specificity and creativity of the idea. That, Remus said with an appreciative nod, is an excellent suggestion worthy of a Marauder's son. But perhaps we can think even bigger. I believe your aunt and uncle deserve something truly memorable. They spent the morning planning. Harry revealed details about the Dursleys' daily routines, their particular dislikes and fears, their most prized possessions. Remus was careful to keep the proposed pranks within bounds, frightening and inconveniencing, but not dangerous. After lunch, Remus addressed another important matter. Harry, there's something I need to tell you about myself. Something that might change how you feel about staying with me. Harry looked up from the magical book Remus had lent him, A Beginner's Guide to Magical Creatures with Moving Illustrations. What is it? Remus took a deep breath. I have a condition. A magical ailment. Once a month, during the full moon, I transform into a werewolf. Harry's eyes widened, but not with the fear Remus expected. A real werewolf? Like in the book? He flipped pages until he found the werewolf illustration, which showed a transformation sequence. Yes, Remus said cautiously. It's why I have these scars, why I sometimes look ill. I take precautions, I lock myself away during the transformations to ensure I can't hurt anyone. But it's the reason I've lived alone, why I've struggled to find work. Harry studied the moving illustration thoughtfully. Does it hurt? When you change? The question caught Remus off guard. Most people's first concerns were for their own safety, not his pain. Yes, he admitted. It's quite painful. Harry nodded solemnly. That's not fair. Such a simple statement of empathy, yet it moved Remus deeply. No, it's not. But it's been my reality since I was a child not much older than you. Is that why you didn't come for me before? Harry asked, his perceptiveness surprising Remus again. Because you're a werewolf? Partly, Remus acknowledged. I believed you would be better off with a normal family, without the complications my condition brings. And there were other factors, Dumbledore's protection spells, my own grief. I wouldn't have minded, Harry said simply. Being with someone who actually wanted me, even if they were different sometimes. Remus had to look away, blinking rapidly. Well, he said when he could trust his voice again, I'm here now. And if you'll have me, I intend to stay. Harry's smile was answer enough. Now, Remus said, pulling himself together, shall we prepare for our visit to Privet Drive? Night had fallen by the time they apparat to the park near Privet Drive. Remus had spent the afternoon teaching Harry about basic magical theory and regaling him with stories about the Marauders' school days. The boy had been an attentive audience, particularly when Remus described the complex magical map they had created of Hogwarts. "Will I go to Hogwarts too?" Harry had asked. "When you turn 11, Remus assured him. "Your name has been down since you were born." Now, under cover of darkness and disillusionment charms, they made their way toward number 4. The house was dark except for a light in the upstairs master bedroom. A policeman sat in a car across the street, presumably watching for Harry's return. "Muggles will have their own search for you," Remus whispered. "But they won't find us." They slipped around to the back garden. Remus cast a subtle detection charm, smiling grimly at the results. "Dumbledore has been here," he murmured. "And recently. There are traces of his magic." "Is that bad?" Harry whispered. "It means he knows you're gone," Remus replied. "But I doubt he knows you're with me yet. Let's proceed with our plan before he puts it together." Remus cast a series of complex charms on the house. None would activate immediately, that wasn't the Marauder way. Each spell was designed to trigger under specific circumstances or at specific times, creating an escalating series of disturbing events for the Dursleys. First, he whispered to Harry, "Every time your uncle says the word normal, all the lights in the house will flicker." Harry grinned in the darkness. "Second, your aunt's prized roses will bloom with faces that whisper insults only she can hear." Harry had to stifle a giggle. "Third, your cousin's television will randomly change to educational programs about manners and sharing, and the remote won't work to change it back." "He'll hate that more than anything," Harry whispered. "Fourth, every mirror in the house will show your mother's eyes, your eyes, staring back instead of their reflection, but only for a split second, making them doubt what they saw." Harry went very still. "My mother's eyes," he repeated softly. "Your eyes are exactly like hers," Remus told him. "It used to unsettle Petunia even when Lily was alive. She was jealous, I think." The final pranks were more elaborate. The cupboard under the stairs would periodically emit sounds of a child weeping, but only when the house was otherwise silent. Vernon's car would mysteriously relocate to different spots in the neighborhood overnight. And most dramatically, on the night of the next full moon, phantom howls would surround the house, and shadow wolves would appear to run past the windows. "That should keep them appropriately unsettled," Remus said with satisfaction as they finished. "A proper Marauder send-off." As they prepared to leave, Harry tugged on Remus's sleeve. "Can we look inside? Just once. I want to see my cupboard again." The request surprised Remus. "Are you sure?" Harry nodded, his expression determined. "I want to remember, so I never have to go back." Remus understood. With a careful charm, he made a small portion of the back door transparent from their side, allowing them to peer inside without entering. The house was silent and dark. They could see the hallway, and the cupboard door standing partially open. "Someone's been examining it," Remus observed. "Probably that Dumbledore person," Harry said. They stood in silence for a moment, Harry staring at the small cupboard that had been his prison for 5 years. "I'm never going back in there," he said finally, with surprising conviction for a 6-year-old. "No," Remus agreed, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. "You never will." They turned away from the house, walking back toward the park where they could safely disapparate. As they reached the street, Harry suddenly froze, tugging urgently on Remus's coat. "Someone's there," he whispered. Remus followed Harry's gaze to see a tall figure in sweeping robes standing beside the police car. The officer inside appeared to be asleep. As they watched, the figure turned, and moonlight illuminated a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles. "Dumbledore," Remus breathed. "He's checking the wards." Keeping the disillusionment charm active, Remus pulled Harry close against his side and began moving carefully away. They had nearly reached the corner when Dumbledore's voice cut through the night. "I can sense your magic, Remus. And Harry's presence too. Please, I only wish to talk." Remus hesitated, then sighed. "Stay close to me," he whispered to Harry. "If anything happens, I want you to run to the park. I've taught you how to summon the night bus." Harry nodded, pressing closer to Remus's side. Remus cancelled the disillusionment charm, revealing them both. "Headmaster," he said formally. "I was wondering when you'd find us." Dumbledore approached slowly, his eyes moving from Remus to Harry, who partially hid behind his new guardian. "I see Harry is unharmed," the old wizard observed. "That, at least, is a relief." "More than can be said for his time with the Dursleys," Remus replied, unable to keep the edge from his voice. "I have seen the cupboard," Dumbledore acknowledged, genuine regret in his voice. "A grievous error in judgment on my part." "An error?" Remus repeated incredulously. "Harry was locked in a cupboard, starved, lied to about his parents, about who he is." "I never intended," Dumbledore began. "Your intentions don't matter," Remus interrupted. "The result does. This child, James and Lily's son, has been abused for 5 years while I trusted your judgment." Dumbledore sighed heavily. "You are right to be angry, Remus. I prioritized Harry's physical safety over his emotional well-being, and that was wrong. But removing him from his blood relatives dissolves the protection Lily's sacrifice created. What good is protection from Death Eaters if his own family were the ones hurting him?" Remus demanded. Harry, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. "Sir. Are you going to make me go back?" Dumbledore looked down at the small boy, really seeing him perhaps for the first time. The oversized clothes, the tape-mended glasses, the wariness in those lily-green eyes. "No, Harry," he said softly. "I don't believe that would be in your best interest after all." Remus felt Harry relax slightly against his side. "However," Dumbledore continued, addressing Remus now, "there are complications with your guardianship that must be addressed." "Your condition, I'm aware," Remus said stiffly. "And so is Harry. I've made arrangements for full moons." "It's not only that," Dumbledore said. "The Ministry will not look favorably on a werewolf having custody of any child, let alone Harry Potter. There will be legal challenges." "Then I'll face them," Remus said simply. "I won't abandon him again." Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. But you cannot remain at your cottage. It's too exposed, too easily found. You'll need somewhere with stronger protections." "We'll manage," Remus said, though privately he acknowledged the concern was valid. "I may have a solution," Dumbledore said. "But it would require trust on your part, trust one realize I may no longer deserve." Remus raised an eyebrow. "What solution?" "Potter Cottage in Godric's Hollow remains in Harry's name, though it has stood empty since that night. The damage was primarily to one section. With some restoration work, it could be made habitable again, and the existing wards could be strengthened." Harry looked up at Remus, hope shining in his eyes. "My parents' house," he whispered. Remus felt torn. Returning to Godric's Hollow would be painful, the memories overwhelming. But it was Harry's birthright, and the protection of being on Potter land would be significant. "We could visit," he said cautiously. "See how we feel about it." Dumbledore nodded. "A reasonable approach. And Remus, I will support your guardianship of Harry. Officially and publicly. It is the least I can do to make amends for my mistake." Remus was surprised by the offer. Dumbledore's influence could indeed smooth the path considerably. "Thank you," he said with genuine gratitude. "But understand this, Headmaster, Harry's welfare comes first now. Before prophecies, before the greater good, before everything. As it should have all along," Dumbledore agreed solemnly. Now, perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere less exposed. The Muggle policeman will be waking soon. Remus nodded, then turned to Harry. How would you like to see Hogwarts, Harry? Just for a brief visit while we sort things out. Harry's face lit up. The castle? Where my parents went to school. The very same, Remus confirmed. As they prepared to leave Privet Drive behind, Harry turned for one last look at number 4. At that precise moment, all the lights in the house began to flicker wildly, despite no one being awake to say the trigger word. Harry looked questioningly at Remus, who smiled innocently. A parting gift, he murmured. The rest will activate as planned. Harry grinned, a true marauder's smile that would have made James proud. Together with Dumbledore, they disappeared into the night, leaving behind a house that would soon become a monument to the marauder's final prank, justice for the son of Prongs. Behind them, in the darkened house, Vernon Dursley woke to frantically blinking lights. What's happening? He mumbled sleepily. This isn't normal. The lights surged brighter, then popped, plunging the house into darkness as the first charm took effect. It was only the beginning. Chapter 2, Safe Haven. The early morning mist shrouded the ruins of Potter Cottage as Remus and Harry appeared at the edge of the property. Dawn had barely broken, casting the scene in ethereal grey light. Harry pressed closer to Remus's side, eyes wide as he took in the sight of his first home. One section of the cottage lay in ruins, the roof collapsed inward, walls crumbled where Voldemort's curse had backfired. The rest of the structure remained intact, though weathered by 5 years of abandonment. Ivy crept up the stone walls, and the garden had grown wild, reclaiming the path that led to the front door. This is where Harry began, his voice small. Where you lived with your parents, Remus finished gently. And yes, where they died protecting you. They stood in silence for a moment, paying quiet respect to the memories that haunted the place. Then Remus squeezed Harry's shoulder reassuringly. Shall we go inside? Or would you prefer to come back another day? Harry squared his small shoulders. I want to see it. They approached slowly. Magical preservation spells had kept the worst of the decay at bay, but the cottage still felt abandoned, frozen in time. As they reached the door, Remus hesitated. The last time I was here. He began, then shook his head. Never mind. Let's see what we have to work with. The door recognized Harry's magical signature and swung open at his touch. Inside, dust covered everything, but otherwise the main living areas were eerily preserved, furniture still in place, books on shelves, even a cold cup of tea sitting on an end table. Your mother was having tea when it happened, Remus said softly. She left it when the wards alerted them to Voldemort's arrival. Harry moved through the space with reverent curiosity, trailing his fingers over a worn armchair. My dad's? He asked. Yes, Remus smiled sadly. James loved that chair. He would sit there with you on his lap, making colored smoke rings with his wand for you to catch. Harry's eyes glistened. I think I remember that, a little bit. Colored lights. Remus felt his own eyes growing damp. You might. You were 15 months old, after all. They continued exploring the ground floor, the kitchen with its vintage magical appliances, a small study filled with books and magical instruments, a dining room where family photos still hung on the walls. Harry stopped before a large photograph of a young couple holding a black-haired baby, all three laughing as autumn leaves swirled around them. That's them, he whispered. My parents. Remus nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. James with his perpetually messy hair and mischievous grin, so like Harry's own. Lily with her vibrant smile and those unmistakable green eyes. Harry reached out tentatively, touching the frame. They look happy. They were, Remus assured him. Especially with you. You were the center of their world, Harry. The boy stared at the image for a long time, drinking in every detail. Then, with obvious reluctance, he turned away. Can we see upstairs? The intact portion, yes, Remus said. The nursery is in the damaged section. We won't go there today. They climbed the creaking stairs to find a master bedroom and guest room largely untouched by the destruction. Harry wandered into the master bedroom, taking in the large four-poster bed with its deep red curtains, the matching wardrobes, the vanity where Lily's hairbrush still lay. We could live here, Harry said suddenly, turning to Remus with determination. We could fix it. Remus hesitated. Are you sure, Harry? Living here comes with memories, some wonderful, some painful. But they're my memories, Harry replied with surprising wisdom. And my parents would want me to be here, wouldn't they? Instead of in that cupboard. Yes, Remus said softly. They would. Then it's settled, Harry declared with the simple certainty of childhood. This is home now. Remus felt something shift in his heart, a sense of rightness, of coming full circle. Very well, he agreed. We'll make this home again. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Remus, with occasional assistance from Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall, worked to restore the cottage to livability. The damaged section was magically sealed off until proper rebuilding could occur, while the intact portions were thoroughly cleaned, repaired, and warded. McGonagall, upon first seeing Harry, had burst into tears, something Remus had never witnessed from his former professor. "Oh, my dear boy," she'd said, gathering herself quickly. "You look so like James, but with Lily's eyes. It's quite remarkable." Harry had warmed to the stern-faced witch immediately, especially when she transformed into a tabby cat to demonstrate transfiguration. After that, he followed her around eagerly whenever she visited, peppering her with questions about his parents as students. "Your father was exceptionally talented at transfiguration," she told him one afternoon as she repaired a crack in the kitchen ceiling. "Though he often used his talents for mischief rather than academics." "Like what?" Harry asked, eyes bright with interest. McGonagall's lips twitched. "Well, there was the incident with the Great Hall statues. Somehow they were all transformed to resemble the Slytherin Quidditch team in rather unflattering poses. Took 3 professors to sort it out." Harry giggled, glancing at Remus, who was feigning innocence while organizing the kitchen cupboards. "I had nothing to do with that particular prank," Remus claimed, though his smile suggested otherwise. "Of course not, Mr. Lupin," McGonagall replied dryly. "Just as you had nothing to do with the singing suits of armor that followed Professor Slughorn for a week." Harry's delighted laughter filled the kitchen, bringing warmth to the once abandoned space. Dumbledore's visits were less frequent but significant. He brought ancient books on warding and protection spells, working alongside Remus to establish defenses that would keep Harry safe without the blood protection of Privet Drive. "The cottage exists in a unique magical space," Dumbledore explained as they reinforced the property boundaries. "Being the site of both a terrible dark magic event and a profound act of sacrificial love magic has created a resonance we can build upon." "Will it be enough?" Remus asked, thinking of the Death Eaters still at large who would give anything to harm the child who had vanquished their master. "With the additional measures we're implementing, yes," Dumbledore assured him. "The Fidelius charm will be our final protection, with you as secret keeper." "Not you?" Remus asked, surprised. Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled sadly. "I think we've established that my judgment is not infallible, Remus." "No, Harry's safety should rest with someone whose primary concern is his well-being, not the greater good." It was as close to an apology as the old wizard would offer, and Remus accepted it with a nod. Throughout the restoration, Harry was a constant presence, alternating between quiet observation and enthusiastic participation. He took particular joy in helping to restore the garden, working alongside Remus to clear weeds, prune back overgrown shrubs, and plant new flowers. "My aunt made me garden all the time," he explained as he carefully patted soil around a young rosebush. "But I wasn't allowed to enjoy it. She'd yell if I got too dirty or worked too slowly." "Well, Here you can get as dirty as you like, Remus assured him. And gardening should be enjoyed, not endured. Harry grinned, promptly smearing mud across his cheek as if testing the freedom. By the end of the second week, Potter Cottage had been transformed. The exterior still maintained its quaint charm, with restored stonework and a freshly thatched roof over the undamaged sections. Inside, the rooms were clean and welcoming, filled with a mixture of original Potter furniture and modest additions Remus had transfigured or purchased. The final touch came in the form of the Fidelius charm, cast by Dumbledore with Remus as secret keeper. As the complex magic settled over the property, Remus felt the responsibility of Harry's safety settle more firmly on his shoulders. Remember, Dumbledore cautioned as they completed the spell, even with these protections, caution is advised. The Ministry is still searching for Harry, and not everyone there has his best interests at heart. I understand, Remus said grimly. We'll be careful. That evening, as Harry sat at the kitchen table drawing with magical crayons that changed color as he used them, Remus prepared a simple but hearty dinner. The domesticity of the scene struck him suddenly, how quickly they had fallen into a routine, how naturally Harry had come to trust him. Harry, he said, setting down a plate of shepherd's pie, are you happy here? Truly. Harry looked up, surprise evident on his face. Course I am. Why wouldn't I be? Well, it's been a rather big change. And I'm still learning how to be a proper guardian. Harry considered this seriously, then said, you don't lock me in cupboards, you let me eat until I'm full, and you tell me about my mum and dad. That makes you brilliant already. The simple assessment brought a lump to Remus's throat. That's a rather low bar, Harry. Maybe, Harry shrugged, picking up his fork. But you also read me stories and taught me how to play exploding snap and don't mind when I ask questions. You can always ask questions, Remus assured him. Your curiosity is something to nurture, not suppress. Harry nodded, taking a bite of shepherd's pie. See? Brilliant. Remus smiled, hiding the surge of emotion he felt. How could the Dursleys have failed to appreciate the remarkable child entrusted to them? Their loss, he decided firmly. Their very significant loss. Harry's 7th birthday dawned bright and clear. Remus had spent days preparing, determined to make it special. He'd quietly asked McGonagall about Potter family birthday traditions, and she had provided details from conversations with James over the years. Remus woke early to prepare breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes in the shape of a lion, apparently a Potter birthday staple. The kitchen was decorated with streamers that changed color and sparkled, and a banner that sang, Happy Birthday, when Harry entered the room. Happy birthday, Harry, Remus said warmly as the boy appeared, still in pajamas, hair even messier than usual. I believe this is the traditional Potter birthday breakfast. Harry's eyes widened at the sight of the decorated kitchen and the lion-shaped pancakes. All this is for me. Of course, Remus replied, keeping his voice light despite the pang he felt at Harry's surprise. 7 is a significant birthday in the wizarding world, the age when a child's magic begins to stabilize. Harry climbed into his chair, staring in wonder at the pancakes. They're amazing. Did my dad have these too? Every birthday, according to your grandmother's tradition, Remus confirmed, sitting down across from him. Your grandfather would make them while your grandmother enchanted them to roar. As if on cue, the pancake lion let out a tiny roar, making Harry jump, then dissolve into giggles. I added that touch myself, Remus admitted with a grin. Now eat up. We have a full day planned. After breakfast came presents, not an overwhelming pile, but each one thoughtfully selected. A beginner's book on defense against the dark arts, your father would insist, Remus explained, a child-sized set of Quidditch robes in Gryffindor colors, a magical photo album with pictures of James and Lily that Remus had collected, and a small velvet box containing a signet ring bearing the Potter family crest. This would traditionally be given when you turn 11, Remus explained as Harry examined the ring with awe. But I thought you might like to have it now. It's been in your father's family for generations. Where was it all this time? Harry asked, carefully sliding it onto his finger, where it magically adjusted to fit. In the Potter vault at Gringotts, Remus explained. Dumbledore helped me access it for you. Harry stared at the ring, then looked up with shining eyes. Thank you, Remus. For everything. Remus smiled, pushing aside the pang of guilt that still occasionally surfaced, guilt for not checking on Harry sooner, for accepting Dumbledore's assurances without verification. You're very welcome, Harry. Now, how would you like to try out those Quidditch robes? I thought we might have a flying lesson. Harry's expression of pure joy was answer enough. The day continued with Harry's first flying lesson on a training broom Remus had procured, carefully warded to stay within the property boundaries and not rise more than 6 feet. Harry took to it with natural grace that instantly reminded Remus of James. Your father would be bursting with pride right now, Remus called as Harry made a careful turn. He was an exceptional flyer himself, Gryffindor chaser and eventual team captain. Harry beamed, executing another wobbly but successful turn. Do you think I could be on a team someday too? If you continue as you've begun, absolutely, Remus assured him. After flying came a picnic lunch in the garden, followed by a special visitor. Rubeus Hagrid arrived bearing a somewhat lopsided homemade cake and a hand-carved wooden flute. Look at yeah, the half-giant exclaimed, tears in his beetle-black eyes. Last time I saw yeah, I was talking yeah from this very cottage, just a tiny baby. And now look, the spittin' image of your dad, but with your mum's eyes. Harry was initially overwhelmed by Hagrid's size and emotional greeting but soon warmed to his obvious affection. They spent a pleasant hour with Hagrid regaling Harry with tales of magical creatures and more stories about his parents at Hogwarts. As evening approached, McGonagall arrived for the birthday dinner. Another Potter tradition, apparently, was inviting chosen family to share the meal. They ate in the dining room, with enchanted candles floating overhead and James and Lily smiling down from their portraits on the wall. To Harry, Remus proposed a toast, raising his glass of pumpkin juice to match Harry's. May your 7th year bring joy, learning, and adventure, though perhaps slightly less adventure than your father would have encouraged. To Harry, echoed McGonagall and Hagrid, causing the boy to blush with pleasure. After dinner and cake, both Remus's carefully prepared one and Hagrid's enthusiastic creation, came the final birthday surprise. There's one more Potter tradition, Remus explained, leading Harry to the back garden as darkness fell. On the night of their child's birthday, they would release lanterns, one for each year of life, plus one to grow on. Together, they lit 8 magical lanterns that glowed with soft golden light. Harry released them one by one into the night sky, watching with wonder as they floated upward, joining the emerging stars. Make a wish on the last one, Remus instructed softly. It's tradition. Harry closed his eyes, holding the final lantern. His lips moved silently, and then he released it, watching as it joined its companions in the velvet sky. As the lanterns faded into the distance, Harry leaned against Remus's side. This was the best day ever, he said simply. Remus put his arm around the boy's shoulders, his heart full. Happy birthday, Harry. The peaceful routine they established in the weeks following Harry's birthday was precious to both of them. Mornings were for lessons. Remus began teaching Harry the foundations of magic, focusing on theory in controlled exercises that wouldn't require a wand. Magic isn't just about spells and wands, Remus explained as they sat in the garden one morning. It's about understanding the energy within you and around you. Harry, cross-legged on the grass, nodded seriously. Like when I made the glass at the zoo disappear. Exactly, Remus confirmed. That was accidental magic, your magical core responding to your emotions. What we're doing now is helping you recognize that energy so you can eventually direct it consciously. They practiced meditation exercises designed to help Harry sense his own magic, and simple wandless exercises like trying to make a feather move with focused intent rather than a spell. Harry approached each lesson with enthusiasm, especially when Remus framed them as secret marauder training. Afternoons were often spent exploring the village of Godric's Hollow under careful disguise. Remus would transfigure Harry's appearance slightly, changing his hair color, hiding his scar, altering the shape of his glasses, and they would wander the mixed magical and muggle community. "Your father used to fly his toy broom around that square," Remus told him during one such outing, indicating a small green park. "Nearly gave an elderly muggle woman a heart attack when she saw a toddler zooming 3 feet off the ground." Harry giggled, imagining the scene. These stories were precious to him, each one a small piece of the parents he had lost, helping to build a picture of who they had been. Evenings were for reading together by the fire, playing wizarding games, or working on the ongoing restoration of the cottage. Harry took particular pride in helping decorate his bedroom, choosing magical wall hangings that showed scenes of dragons in flight and forests full of magical creatures. But beneath this peaceful surface, tensions were brewing. The Ministry's search for Harry Potter had not abated. If anything, it had intensified as weeks passed with no sign of the boy who lived. The Daily Prophet ran near-daily articles speculating on his whereabouts, some suggesting he had been kidnapped by remaining Death Eaters, others implying Dumbledore had secretly moved him abroad. Remus kept these papers away from Harry, but he followed the developments carefully. Through discreet communications with Dumbledore, he learned that factions within the Ministry were pushing for increasingly aggressive search measures. "Cornelius Fudge is under tremendous pressure," Dumbledore informed Remus during a brief visit in early August. "Lucius Malfoy and his circle are demanding action, claiming concern for the boy's safety while pursuing their own agenda." "You don't think they suspect I have him?" Remus asked, glancing toward the garden where Harry was practicing his feather-floating exercises. "No, but they are pushing for the use of magical tracking methods that might eventually lead here, despite our protections," Dumbledore replied gravely. "And I'm afraid there's another concern. The full moon approaches, and your monthly absence from Harry's side creates a vulnerability." Remus's expression tightened. The upcoming full moon, his first since taking guardianship of Harry, had been weighing on his mind heavily. "I've prepared the cellar," he said. "It's reinforced, silenced, and triple-warded. Harry will remain upstairs, and I've arranged for Minerva to stay with him through the night." "A good precaution," Dumbledore nodded. "But I fear we must prepare for the possibility that our secret won't hold indefinitely. The Ministry has resources, and not all my influence can hold them at bay forever." "What do you suggest?" Remus asked. "Controlled revelation," Dumbledore said simply. "On our terms, not theirs. A hearing before the Wisengamot regarding Harry's guardianship, with you voluntarily presenting your case." Remus considered this. "And my condition?" "You know what the laws are regarding werewolves and guardianship." "Laws can be challenged," Dumbledore replied. "Especially when the boy who lived himself expresses his preference." His blue eyes twinkled slightly. "Harry is rather fond of you, I believe." "And I of him," Remus said softly. "Very well. After the full moon, we can discuss the specifics of this hearing." As Dumbledore departed, Remus joined Harry in the garden. The boy had succeeded in making his feather hover a few inches above his palm, impressive wandless control for his age. "Look, Remus," he called excitedly. "I'm doing it." "Excellent work," Remus praised, settling onto the grass beside him. "Your control is improving daily." Harry beamed, then let the feather settle gently back into his palm. "Was that Professor Dumbledore I saw leaving?" "Yes, he came to discuss some matters regarding our situation." Harry's expression grew serious. "Are we in trouble? Do I have to go back to the Dursleys?" "No," Remus assured him firmly. "But we do need to address the fact that the Ministry is still searching for you. Eventually, we'll need to make your whereabouts, and the fact that you're with me, official." "Will they try to take me away because you're a werewolf?" Harry asked perceptively. Remus blinked, surprised by Harry's directness. "Some might try, yes. There are laws that make it difficult for people with my condition to be guardians. That's stupid, Harry said flatly. You're the best guardian ever. Warmth filled Remus's chest at the simple declaration. Thank you, Harry. But we need to be prepared for some challenges. Harry nodded solemnly. I'll tell them I want to stay with you. I'll tell everyone. And that will carry significant weight, Remus assured him. But first, we need to get through the next few days. The full moon is coming up. Harry's expression turned to concern. Does it hurt very badly? When you change? Yes, Remus answered honestly. But I'm used to it, and I take precautions to ensure everyone's safety, including my own. What happens to me while you're, a wolf? Professor McGonagall will stay with you. I'll be locked securely in the reinforced cellar. You won't be in any danger, and by morning I'll be myself again, though rather tired. Harry seemed to consider this carefully. Can I help somehow? After, I mean. The question touched Remus deeply. Just knowing you're safe and waiting will help more than you know, Harry. The night of the full moon arrived with tense preparation. McGonagall appeared in the late afternoon, bringing supplies and her characteristic brisk efficiency to the proceedings. Now, Mr. Potter, she addressed Harry as Remus checked the cellar wards one final time, you and I shall have a pleasant evening above stairs while Professor Lupin handles his monthly transformation. I've brought several books I think you might enjoy, and perhaps we can continue your transfiguration lessons. Harry nodded, though his eyes kept drifting to Remus, who was growing paler by the hour as moonrise approached. Remus, Harry said quietly as the time drew near, will you be okay? Really? Remus knelt to meet Harry's eyes. I've been managing this condition since I was very young. It's difficult, yes, but I always survive it. By tomorrow afternoon, I'll be quite recovered. Harry impulsively threw his arms around Remus's neck in a tight hug. Be safe, he whispered. Remus returned the embrace, feeling a surge of protective love for this child who had so quickly become the center of his world. I promise, he said. Now go with Professor McGonagall, and I'll see you in the morning. As Remus descended to the cellar for his transformation, he carried that moment with him, the warmth of Harry's concern providing a small light against the darkness to come. The transformation was as brutal as always, bones breaking and reforming, consciousness subsumed by the wolf's mind. But the wolf, for its part, seemed somehow calmer than usual, as if aware of the child above and the need to protect rather than threaten. Morning found Remus curled on the cellar floor, human once more, exhausted but with fewer self-inflicted injuries than usual. As he slowly gathered the strength to rise, he heard the cellar door unlock, earlier than expected. Remus, came Harry's voice, tentative and concerned. Are you awake? Professor McGonagall said I should wait, but I heard you moving. Harry, Remus croaked, hastily pulling a blanket around his naked, scarred body. You shouldn't be down here yet. But Harry was already descending the stairs, carrying a tray with tea and toast. When he saw Remus, pale, bloodied, and trembling, he faltered briefly but then continued forward with determined steps. I made you breakfast, he said simply. Professor McGonagall helped with the tea, but I did the toast myself. Remus was momentarily speechless. No one, not even his fellow marauders, had ever been so matter-of-fact about his post-transformation state. Thank you, he managed finally. That's very thoughtful. Harry set the tray down carefully and then, to Remus's surprise, began examining the scratches on Remus's arms with a critical eye. These need cleaning, he announced. I used to help Aunt Petunia with Dudley's scrapes. I know how to do it. Before Remus could protest, Harry had disappeared back up the stairs, returning moments later with a first aid kit. With remarkable composure for a 7-year-old, he began methodically cleaning and bandaging the worst of Remus's self-inflicted wounds. Harry, you don't have to, Remus began. I want to help, Harry interrupted firmly. You take care of me all the time. Remus fell silent, allowing the child to minister to him with gentle, careful movements. When Harry finished, he sat back on his heels, looking pleased with his work. "Professor McGonagall said you'd need lots of rest and chocolate," he reported. "She had to go back to Hogwarts for a meeting, but she said she'd return this afternoon to check on us." "She's quite right about the rest and chocolate," Remus confirmed, managing a small smile. "Though I think I should make it upstairs to my bed first." "I'll help," Harry declared, offering his shoulder for support with such determination that Remus didn't have the heart to refuse, though the child's small frame could hardly provide much actual assistance. Together they made their slow way up the cellar stairs and through the cottage to Remus's bedroom, where Harry had already turned down the covers and placed a stack of books on the nightstand. "I picked books I thought you might want to read," Harry explained. "And there's water and more chocolate." Remus sank gratefully onto the bed, overwhelmed by the boy's thoughtfulness. "Harry, this is, thank you." Harry shrugged, suddenly shy. "Is there anything else you need?" Remus shook his head, throat tight with emotion. "Just rest, as McGonagall prescribed. Perhaps you could read for a while in the chair there, if you'd like the company." Harry brightened, selecting a book from the stack. "This one? It's about magical defense. I thought we could learn together." "Perfect," Remus agreed, settling back against his pillows. As Harry began to read aloud, stumbling occasionally over the longer words but pressing on determinedly, Remus felt a profound sense of peace. Despite his physical pain, despite the challenges they would soon face, this moment, this child's acceptance and care, was a gift beyond measure. 3 days after the full moon, as Remus was fully recovered and they had resumed their normal routine, the first tangible threat to their sanctuary arrived. It was mid-morning, and they were in the garden harvesting herbs for a basic potions lesson when the wards triggered a gentle alert. "Someone's approaching the boundary," Remus said, instantly alert. The Fidelius charm meant they couldn't be seen, but magical detection methods might still register unusual activity. "Inside, Harry, quickly." They hurried into the cottage, and Remus directed Harry to the secret room they had prepared for emergencies, a space hidden behind the study bookshelf, equipped with emergency supplies and a secondary escape route. "Stay here until I come for you," Remus instructed. "If I don't return within an hour, use the emergency port key to Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall will be expecting you." Harry nodded, looking scared but resolute. "Who do you think it is?" "Likely Ministry officials," Remus said honestly. "They've been searching all known Potter properties. Don't worry, they can't see the cottage itself because of the Fidelius charm, but they might detect magic being used." He closed the hidden door, ensuring Harry was safely concealed, then moved to the front of the cottage where he could observe the property boundary through a window. 3 figures in ministry robes stood at the edge of what appeared to them as an overgrown, abandoned lot. 2 men and a woman, all with the distinctive posture of aurors. One, Remus recognized with a chill, Walden McNair, a suspected Death Eater who had somehow avoided Azkaban and secured a ministry position. The trio cast detection spells that washed against the property's wards like waves against a shore. Remus held his breath, trusting Dumbledore's work but wary nonetheless. "There's definitely magic here," the woman was saying, her voice faintly audible through the wards. "Recent magic, not just residual from the Potter incident." "Could be the preservation spells Dumbledore placed," the second man suggested. "They were designed to be self-sustaining." McNair shook his head. "No, this is active magic. Defensive wards, recently cast." His dark eyes scanned the property with unsettling intensity, as if he could somehow pierce the Fidelius charm through sheer malevolence. "The wolf is here. And likely the boy." Remus tensed. How could McNair have connected him to Harry's disappearance? "There's no evidence Lupin is involved," the woman argued. "He was questioned weeks ago and provided memories showing he was in northern Scotland when Potter disappeared." "Modified memories," McNair insisted. "The creature is cleverer than most give him credit for. And he was close to the Potters. Even if you're right, we can't penetrate these wards without a warrant specifically naming this property, the second man pointed out. Which we can't get without evidence. McNair's expression darkened. By the time we navigate the bureaucracy, they could be gone. I say we force entry now. And I say we follow procedure, the woman countered firmly. Unless you want to explain to Madame Bones why we violated protocol. A tense silence followed. Then McNair spat on the ground. Fine. We document the magical signature and request a specific warrant. But this gets reported directly to Lucius Malfoy. He has a particular interest in the Potter situation. The trio performed several more detection spells, carefully recording the results, then disapparated with sharp cracks that echoed across the property. Remus waited 10 full minutes before retrieving Harry from the hidden room. The boy emerged looking pale but composed. Were they looking for us? He asked immediately. Yes, Remus confirmed, seeing no point in lying. But the wards held. They couldn't see the cottage. I heard a name, Malfoy. Who's that? Remus sighed, leading Harry to the kitchen where he put on the kettle for tea. Lucius Malfoy is a powerful, wealthy wizard with significant influence at the Ministry. He was also, though it was never proven, one of Voldemort's supporters. Harry's eyes widened. And he's looking for me? Why? That's the question, isn't it? Remus mused, preparing cups for them both. Officially, the Ministry is searching for you out of concern for your welfare. But Malfoy and his circle would have other motives. What do we do now? Harry asked, wrapping his small hands around the warm teacup Remus placed before him. We accelerate our plans, Remus decided. Dumbledore was right, we need to control how and when you're found. I'll contact him today to arrange the Wizengamot hearing. Harry nodded seriously. Will I have to talk to them? The Wizengamot people? Most likely, Remus confirmed. They'll want to hear from you directly about your preferences and experiences. I'll tell them about the cupboard, Harry said with sudden determination. And about how happy I am here with you. Remus smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze Harry's hand. Your voice will carry significant weight, Harry. You may be young, but you're also the boy who lived. That counts for something in our world. I don't care about being the boy who lived, Harry said firmly. I care about being with you. The simple declaration warmed Remus's heart even as it steeled his resolve. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would fight with everything he had to remain Harry's guardian. The boy had already lost too much. The Wizengamot hearing was scheduled for the following week, sooner than expected due to Dumbledore's influence. In the days leading up to it, Remus prepared Harry carefully, explaining the process and likely questions without coaching his answers. The most important thing, Remus emphasized as they sat before the fire the night before the hearing, is to speak the truth as you see it. Don't try to say what you think they want to hear. Just be honest about your experiences and feelings. Harry nodded, fidgeting with the Potter signet ring that had barely left his finger since his birthday. Will the Dursleys be there? No, Remus assured him. Dumbledore has arranged for their written statements to be submitted instead. Given what they did to you, facing them directly wouldn't be appropriate. Relief crossed Harry's face. What about you? Will you be in trouble for taking me? I've technically committed several offenses, Remus acknowledged. Removing you from your legal guardians, failing to report your whereabouts to the Ministry, evading orders. But Dumbledore believes the circumstances justify my actions, and he's prepared to argue that position before the Wizengamot. And if they don't agree? Harry asked quietly. Remus hesitated. Let's focus on presenting our case as strongly as possible. Dumbledore is confident, and he understands the Wizengamot better than anyone. Harry seemed to accept this, though worry still clouded his eyes. What should I wear? Formal robes, Remus replied, grateful for the change of subject. Professor McGonagall has arranged for a set in your size. They'll help present the image that you belong in the wizarding world, that this is your heritage. And my scar? Harry touched his forehead. Should I show it or hide it? Neither, Remus said thoughtfully. Don't deliberately hide it, but don't draw attention to it either. You're Harry Potter, yes, but this hearing should be about you as a child who deserves a loving home, not as a symbol or celebrity. Harry nodded, absorbing this advice with characteristic seriousness. Then, with a yawn he couldn't quite suppress, he leaned against Remus's side. Time for bed, Remus said gently. Tomorrow will be a long day. Will you tell me a marauder story first? Harry asked hopefully. A good one, to help me not worry about tomorrow. Remus smiled, putting his arm around Harry's shoulders. How about the great Hogwarts snowball enchantment of 1975? When your father and Sirius charmed hundreds of snowballs to follow Slytherins around for an entire week, floating indoors and even into their dormitories. Harry grinned, settling in for the tale. Were you part of it too? Who do you think developed the charm that made the snowballs resistant to melting charms? Remus replied with a wink. Now, it started after a particularly heavy snowfall in December. Later, as Remus tucked Harry into bed, the boy's eyes were already drooping with sleep. Remus, he murmured sleepily. We'll still be together after tomorrow, right? I will do everything in my power to make sure of it, Remus promised, smoothing Harry's wild hair back from his forehead. Now sleep, cub. I'll be right here when you wake. As Harry drifted off, Remus remained beside the bed, watching over the sleeping child. Whatever happened at the Wizengamot hearing, he silently vowed, he would protect Harry, from the Ministry, from Death Eaters, from anyone who might seek to harm him or separate them. The wolf within him, usually a source of shame and pain, growled in agreement. This child was packed now. And nothing would take him away. The Ministry of Magic was imposing at the best of times, but to a 7-year-old child, it was overwhelming. Harry stayed close to Remus's side as they moved through the atrium, his new formal robes making him look older but no less vulnerable. Whispers followed them, word of Harry Potter's reappearance had spread despite Dumbledore's attempts at discretion. Is that him? Potter's boy, with the werewolf Lupin, outrageous that he, look at the scar. Remus kept a protective hand on Harry's shoulder, guiding him toward the lifts where Dumbledore waited, resplendent in formal purple robes. Ah, right on time, the headmaster greeted them, his calm presence creating a small bubble of space in the crowded atrium. Good morning, Harry. Are you ready for today's proceedings? Harry nodded, his face serious. Yes, sir. Remus explained everything. Excellent. The full Wizengamot awaits us. Quite unusual for a guardianship hearing, but given who you are. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. Well, nothing about your situation has ever been ordinary, has it? The lift carried them down to the courtroom level, where they were met by a grim-faced Minerva McGonagall. They've added Lucius Malfoy to the questioning panel, she informed them in a low voice. Last-minute adjustment. Fudge apparently couldn't refuse his generous offer of assistance. Dumbledore's expression hardened slightly. Interesting timing. Lucius has been particularly vocal about finding Harry, has he not? Very, McGonagall confirmed. And he's been meeting privately with Fudge almost daily. Remus exchanged a concerned glance with Dumbledore. Lucius Malfoy's involvement complicated matters significantly. Harry, Remus said quietly, kneeling to the boy's level, remember what we discussed. Answer truthfully, speak clearly, and if you don't understand a question, say so. These proceedings are about your well-being. Your voice matters. Harry squared his shoulders, a determined look crossing his young face. I'm ready. The doors to courtroom 10 swung open, revealing the circular chamber with its tiered seating filled with witches and wizards in plum-colored robes. At the center stood 2 chairs, one adult-sized, one smaller. The magical guardian and ward are to be seated separately during questioning, explained a court official who met them at the door. Remus hesitated, not wanting to leave Harry alone before the intimidating assembly. Dumbledore intervened smoothly. Given Mr. Potter's age and the unusual circumstances, perhaps an exception might be made to allow them to remain together initially, he suggested. I'm afraid not, Chief Warlock, came a smooth, cultured voice. Lucius Malfoy descended from the highest tier, his long blonde hair gleaming in the torchlight. Standard procedure must be followed, especially in such a sensitive case. Dumbledore's blue eyes met Malfoy's grey ones in a brief battle of wills before he inclined his head slightly. Very well. Harry, are you comfortable proceeding as outlined? Harry looked at the chairs, then back at Remus. It's okay, he said quietly. I can do it. Remus squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. I'll be right there, and Professor Dumbledore will be speaking on our behalf. They moved forward into the chamber, separating to take their respective seats. As soon as they were seated, magical bonds appeared around Remus's arms, not tight, but present, a symbolic restraint that made the underlying accusation clear: he was considered a potential threat. Cornelius Fudge, the Minister for Magic, adjusted his lime green bowler hat nervously before addressing the chamber. Extraordinary Session of the Wizengamot, August 17, 1987. The matter before us, the guardianship of Harry James Potter, currently in the unauthorized custody of Remus John Lupin, following the child's removal from his legal Muggle guardians. Fudge peered down at Harry over his spectacles. Mr. Potter, are you here of your own free will? Yes, sir, Harry replied, his voice small but clear in the large chamber. And you understand why we're gathered today? To decide if I can stay with Remus instead of going back to the Dursleys, Harry answered. Indeed, Fudge nodded. Now, Mr. Potter, could you explain to the Wizengamot how you came to leave your aunt and uncle's home? Harry glanced at Remus, who nodded encouragingly, then began his account. With remarkable composure for a 7-year-old, he described his life at Privet Drive, the cupboard, the neglect, the lies about his parents. He explained how Remus had found him and offered him the truth and a home. As he spoke, the chamber grew increasingly silent. Even those who had entered with clear prejudice against Remus seemed affected by Harry's straightforward description of his treatment. They told me my parents died driving drunk, Harry concluded, his voice wobbling slightly. They said nobody wanted me. But Remus told me the truth. He told me my parents were heroes. He showed me pictures of them. He made me lion pancakes on my birthday because that was what my dad used to have. Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, leaned forward. Mr. Potter, did Mr. Lupin ever force you to go with him? Did he ever threaten your relatives? No, ma'am, Harry replied firmly. He asked if I wanted to come. He said it had to be my choice. And he didn't threaten them. He just made the lights flicker when Uncle Vernon said, normal. A ghost of a smile crossed Harry's face at the memory. Malfoy stepped forward, his expression a carefully constructed mask of concern. Mr. Potter, are you aware that your guardian suffers from a condition that makes him dangerous during certain lunar phases? Remus tensed, but Harry answered without hesitation. You mean that he's a werewolf? Yes, sir. He told me straight away. He locks himself in the cellar on full moons, and Professor McGonagall stays with me. I help take care of him after, when he's tired and hurt. Malfoy's eyes narrowed slightly. And you're not frightened? Knowing there's a monster in your home once a month? Objection, Dumbledore interjected smoothly. Characterizing Mr. Lupin's medical condition in such terms is inappropriate and prejudicial. Sustained, Madame Bones agreed before Fudge could speak. Mr. Malfoy, please rephrase your question. Malfoy inclined his head in a gesture of false contrition. My apologies. Mr. Potter, do you feel safe knowing that your guardian transforms into a werewolf each month? I feel safer with Remus than I ever did with the Dursleys, Harry stated firmly. He's never hurt me. He teaches me about magic and my parents and makes sure I eat properly and have clothes that fit. The Dursleys locked me in a cupboard and called me a freak. A murmur ran through the Wisengamot at this direct comparison. Fudge looked increasingly uncomfortable. Yes, well, he blustered. The welfare of the child is of course our primary concern. However, there are laws regarding werewolves and guardianship that cannot simply be overlooked. If I may, Dumbledore rose, addressing the chamber. The Werewolf Guardianship Restriction Act of 1782 does indeed prohibit those with lycanthropy from assuming guardianship of minors. However, Section 3, Paragraph C of the same act provides an exception for cases where a pre-existing familial bond can be demonstrated, and the arrangement is deemed in the best interest of the child. Lupin is not a blood relative of Potter, Malfoy pointed out coldly. No, but he is magically recognized as family, Dumbledore countered. James and Lily Potter named Remus Lupin as Harry's honorary uncle and secondary guardian in their will, creating a magical familial bond recognized by our oldest laws. This revelation caused another stir. Madame Bones frowned thoughtfully. The will was sealed by Wisengamot order after the Potter's death. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. However, as executor of that will, I can attest to its contents. And I have brought the relevant pages, unsealed by goblins of Gringotts specifically for this hearing. He produced a scroll bearing the unmistakable seal of Gringotts and handed it to the court official, who delivered it to Madame Bones. She examined it carefully, then passed it to Fudge. This appears to be in order, she acknowledged. The Potters did indeed name Remus Lupin as an honorary uncle with potential guardianship status, secondary to Sirius Black, who is of course ineligible due to his imprisonment. Be that as it may, Malfoy interjected smoothly, there remains the question of the blood protection Albus Dumbledore himself established at the Muggle residence. Protection that has now been compromised. All eyes turned to Dumbledore, who nodded gravely. It is true that I established protection based on Lily Potter's sacrifice, anchored through her blood relation to Petunia Dursley. However, those protections were dependent on Harry calling Privet Drive home, a psychological component I failed to consider. He looked directly at Harry, regret evident in his blue eyes. A home is not merely a dwelling, but a place of safety, nurturing, and love. It became apparent that Harry never truly saw Privet Drive as home, which undermined the very protection I sought to create. And what protection does he have now? Fudge demanded. With you-know-who supporters still at large? Several Wisengamot members shifted uncomfortably, and Malfoy's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Potter Cottage has been restored and placed under the Fidelius charm, with additional protections I personally established, Dumbledore explained. Moreover, I have instituted regular monitoring charms and arranged for trusted Order members to maintain surveillance of the property periphery. The Order of the Phoenix. Fudge spluttered. That organization was disbanded years ago. Its members, however, remain loyal to the cause of Harry's protection, Dumbledore replied calmly. Madame Bones cleared her throat. Let us return to the central question. Is Remus Lupin a fit guardian for Harry Potter, given his condition? Mr. Lupin, what arrangements have you made for full moons? The magical bonds loosened enough to allow Remus to sit forward. I've reinforced the cellar of Potter Cottage with containment wards designed by Professor Dumbledore himself. On full moon nights, I secure myself there while Professor McGonagall stays with Harry upstairs. The transformations are fully contained, with no risk to Harry. And in the long term, she pressed. As the boy grows? As he attends Hogwarts? The arrangements will evolve as needed, Remus replied steadily. But the fundamental precautions will remain. Harry's safety is my paramount concern. Bones nodded, apparently satisfied with this response. Malfoy, however, was not finished. What of the boy's education? He asked. Has he been attending school? Or has he been isolated, cut off from proper socialization? Before Remus could answer, Harry spoke up. Remus teaches me every day. Magic theory, history, even Muggle subjects. And I'm learning more with him than I ever did at school with the Dursleys, where teachers thought I was stupid because Dudley bullied anyone who was nice to me. Malfoy's lip curled slightly. And your social development? Do you interact with other children your age? Harry hesitated, and Remus knew this was a legitimate concern. They had indeed been relatively isolated, prioritizing security over socialization. We've been focused on Harry's adjustment and security, Remus acknowledged. But we've discussed enrolling him in a small wizarding primary that serves Godric's Hollow and the surrounding area, now that his status is being formalized. A reasonable approach, Madam Bones nodded. Given the circumstances. Fudge looked increasingly uncomfortable as the hearing proceeded, glancing between Dumbledore and Malfoy as if trying to determine which way the political winds were blowing. Finally, he cleared his throat. Perhaps we should hear from Mr. Potter directly on his preferences, he suggested. After all, the boy's wishes should carry some weight. All eyes turned to Harry, who sat up straighter in his chair, his green eyes, Lily's eyes, bright with determination. I want to stay with Remus, he said firmly. He's the first person who ever told me the truth about my parents. The first person who acted like he wanted me. His voice trembled slightly, but he continued. The Dursleys kept me in a cupboard. They called me a burden. Remus gives me a real bedroom and teaches me magic and tells me stories about my mum and dad. Please don't make me go back to the Dursleys. Please let me stay with Remus. The simple, heartfelt plea seemed to affect even the most stoic members of the Wizengamot. Augusta Longbottom, her intimidating vulture hat nodding as she spoke, addressed her fellow members. I have raised a grandson myself after tragedy, she declared in her forthright manner. And I know that love and stability are what children need most. The boy clearly has both with Lupin, regardless of his monthly condition. Tiberius Ogden, one of the eldest Wizengamot members, nodded in agreement. The Potters would want their son with someone who knew them, who could tell the boy about his heritage. Not with muggles who locked him in a cupboard, for Merlin's sake. The tide was turning. Malfoy could see it too, his pale eyes narrowing as he prepared one final attack. While the emotional appeal is touching, he drawled, we must consider the legal precedent this would set. If we exempt Lupin from the Werewolf Guardianship Restriction Act, what other exceptions might be demanded? Where does it end? The law exists for the protection of children. The law exists for justice, Dumbledore countered quietly. And justice must be tempered with mercy and wisdom. We are not being asked to overturn the Act entirely, merely to apply its existing exception clause as the drafters intended, for cases precisely like this one, where the best interests of the child clearly align with placement with a guardian who happens to have lycanthropy. Madam Bones, who had been making notes throughout the proceedings, set down her quill decisively. I believe we have heard sufficient testimony to proceed to a vote. Minister. Fudge, caught between political pressures, hesitated before nodding. Yes, I suppose we should vote. Those in favor of granting provisional guardianship of Harry James Potter to Remus John Lupin, subject to quarterly welfare checks for the first year. Hands rose throughout the chamber, not unanimously, but a clear majority. Even a few traditionally conservative members appeared swayed by Harry's testimony. Those opposed? Malfoy's hand rose immediately, along with those of his closest political allies. But they were outnumbered. The motion carries, Fudge declared, unable to hide his surprise. Provisional guardianship is granted to Remus John Lupin, with quarterly inspections by the Department of Magical Child Welfare for the first year, after which the arrangement will be reviewed. Relief flooded through Remus as the magical bonds on his chair disappeared. Harry, understanding the verdict, broke protocol by leaping from his chair and rushing to Remus, who caught him in a tight embrace. We did it, Harry whispered, his small arms wrapped around Remus's neck. Yes, Remus agreed, his voice thick with emotion. We did. As the Wizengamot members began to file out, Malfoy approached, his face a mask of cold courtesy. Congratulations, he said silkily. You've won this round. But I wonder, Lupin, if you've considered the target you've now placed on your back. The boy who living with a werewolf, it makes for a rather vulnerable arrangement, doesn't it? Is that a threat, Lucius? Dumbledore asked pleasantly, appearing at Remus's side. Malfoy's smile didn't reach his eyes. Merely an observation, Headmaster. The magical world can be unpredictable. Good day, gentlemen. Mr. Potter. He inclined his head slightly, then swept from the courtroom, his black cloak billowing behind him. He's not pleased, McGonagall observed, joining them. No, Dumbledore agreed gravely. And a displeased Lucius Malfoy can be dangerous. You must remain vigilant, Remus. Remus nodded, still holding Harry close. We will be. But for now, I think we've earned a celebration. What do you say, Harry? Ice cream at Fortescue's before we head home? Harry, who had been watching Malfoy's departure with surprising intensity for a 7-year-old, brightened immediately. Really? Can we? I think you've both earned it, Dumbledore smiled. A small public appearance might even be strategically wise at this point. Let the magical world see Harry Potter, happy and well cared for with his guardian. And so, for the first time, Harry Potter openly walked through Diagon Alley, holding Remus Lupin's hand, his lightning scar visible to all who looked their way. Whispers and stares followed them, but Harry barely noticed, too focused on the promise of ice cream and the security of Remus's presence. At Fortescue's, the proprietor himself insisted on serving them, refusing payment and presenting Harry with the most elaborate sundae the shop offered. An honor to serve you, Mr. Potter, Florian Fortescue declared, beaming. Your father was partial to the chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts, as I recall. Harry's eyes widened. You knew my dad too. Indeed. He and your mother would come here often during their Hogwarts days. Always a pleasure to see them. Fortescue leaned in conspiratorially. Though I believe your father once turned my specialty vanilla into soap bubbles during a prank war with some Ravenclaw boys. Quite impressive magic, actually. Harry giggled, glancing at Remus, who nodded confirmation. That was after they charmed his textbooks to recite love poetry whenever he opened them, Remus recalled. Your father felt a proportional response was required. As they enjoyed their ice cream, wizards and witches approached cautiously to welcome Harry back to the wizarding world. Most were respectful, simply offering a word of greeting or thanks. A few tried to touch him or his scar, but Remus intervened smoothly, establishing boundaries without causing offense. People are being nice, Harry observed quietly between bites of ice cream. Not like when the Dursleys took me places and told everyone I was troubled. The wizarding world has been waiting to meet you properly, Remus explained. You represent hope to many of them. But remember, they're responding to the idea of Harry Potter, the boy who lived. They don't know Harry, the boy who builds impressive pillow forts and has a remarkable talent for finding every mud puddle within a mile radius. Harry grinned at this description. I don't find every puddle, he protested. Just the good ones. Their moment of levity was interrupted by a flash of light. A photographer from the Daily Prophet had captured an image of them laughing together over ice cream. Perfect, the man exclaimed. Harry Potter's triumphant return to the wizarding world. Care to comment, Mr. Lupin? Mr. Potter? Before Remus could respond, a regal-looking blonde witch with jeweled spectacles appeared beside the photographer. Rita Skeeter, Daily Prophet, she introduced herself with a predatory smile. The wizarding world is dying to know how little Harry came to be in the custody of she lowered her voice dramatically, werewolf. Care to share the harrowing tale? Was it a daring rescue? Did the Muggles mistreat our savior? We have no comment at this time, Remus said firmly, placing a protective hand on Harry's shoulder. And I'd appreciate if you respected a child's privacy. Privacy? Skeeter's smile widened. Oh, but Harry Potter is public property, Mr. Lupin. The people have a right to know. Harry Potter is a 7-year-old boy, Remus countered, his voice taking on a steel edge rarely heard outside of full moons. "And he is under my protection. We've had a long day and are now going home. Publish what you will about the Weisengamot hearing, it's a matter of public record. But harass Harry, and you'll find I can be quite resourceful in expressing my displeasure." Skeeter seemed about to respond when Florian Fortescue intervened. "You heard the man, Rita. The boy's enjoying his ice cream. Why don't you come back tomorrow for a nice feature on our new summer flavors instead?" With a final calculating look at Harry, Skeeter retreated, though her quick quotes quill continued scratching away at her notepad. "Thank you," Remus said to Fortescue. "Not at all," the ice cream maker replied. "Some people forget that famous or not, he's still a child." He winked at Harry. "Take your time and enjoy. I'll keep the vultures at bay." As they finished their ice cream, Remus kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. The encounter with Skeeter, coming so soon after Malfoy's veiled threat, was a pointed reminder that their challenges were far from over. Harry's visibility would only increase now, making security more complex. "Remus?" Harry's voice broke into his thoughts. "Are you worried about what that man said? At the hearing?" Remus looked down to find Harry watching him with those perceptive green eyes. "Lucius Malfoy is not someone to be taken lightly," he admitted. "But we have strong protections in place, and many allies." Harry nodded solemnly. "He reminded me of Uncle Vernon, but scarier. The way he pretended to be nice while saying mean things." "That's an astute observation," Remus said, impressed by Harry's perception. "Malfoy is indeed dangerous, partly because he hides his true nature behind a polished exterior." "Is he one of the bad wizards who followed Voldemort?" Remus hesitated, aware they were in public. "He claimed to have been under a mind control spell when Voldemort fell," he said carefully. "Many believe otherwise, but it couldn't be proven." Harry processed this information with a seriousness beyond his years. "So we need to be careful of him." "Yes," Remus agreed. "But don't worry too much. Today was a victory. We're officially a family now." Harry brightened at this, ice cream temporarily forgotten. "Really? It's all legal and everything?" "Provisional guardianship," Remus confirmed. "Which means someone will check on us every few months to make sure everything is going well, but otherwise, yes, it's official." Harry launched himself at Remus, heedless of the ice cream smudge he left on Remus's robes. "Thank you," he whispered. "For wanting me." Remus held him close, ignoring the curious onlookers. "Always, Harry. Always." The following day's Daily Prophet carried a front-page photograph of them at Fortescue's, Harry's laughter captured in magical motion as Remus watched him fondly. The headline proclaimed, "Boy Who Lived Found at Last, Harry Potter Returns to Wizarding World." The article beneath, predictably sensationalized by Rita Skeeter, painted a dramatic picture of Harry's rescue from Muggle oppressors by the mysterious bachelor Remus Lupin, a former Hogwarts classmate of the Potters, whose controversial condition raised eyebrows at yesterday's unprecedented Weisengamot hearing. "Well," Remus sighed, setting down the paper at breakfast, "it could have been worse." "She called you mysterious," Harry pointed out, munching on toast. "That sounds cool." "Yes, quite the romantic figure I cut," Remus replied dryly. "Mysterious bachelor with a controversial condition." Harry grinned. "Better than unemployed wastrel, like Uncle Vernon called you." Remus chuckled despite himself. Your uncle did have a way with words. Their morning routine continued as usual, breakfast, lessons, time in the garden, but Remus noticed Harry frequently glancing out windows, as if expecting someone to appear. By midday, Remus decided to address the underlying anxiety. "Everything all right, Harry?" he asked as they took a break from magical theory lessons. "You seem distracted today." Harry fidgeted with his pencil. "That man from yesterday, Malfoy. He seemed really angry that you get to keep me. What if he tries to take me away?" Remus set aside his teaching notes, giving Harry his full attention. Lucius Malfoy is powerful, but not all-powerful. The Wisengamot has ruled, and even he must respect that. But what if he does something sneaky? Harry persisted. Like sending people to grab me when you're not looking. The specific nature of the fear made Remus wonder if Harry had overheard more of yesterday's conversations than he'd realized. Is that what's been bothering you? Fear of being taken? Remus asked gently. Harry nodded, looking down at his hands. At the Dursleys, if something good happened to me, they always found a way to ruin it. And now I have you, and our house, and it's the best thing ever, so. So you're waiting for someone to take it away, Remus finished, understanding dawning. Oh, Harry. He moved to kneel beside Harry's chair, taking the boy's small hands in his own. Listen to me. I promise you, I will not let anyone take you away. Not Malfoy, not the Ministry, not anyone. And do you know why? Harry shook his head, eyes wide. Because you are my cub now, Remus said softly, a hint of the wolf in his voice. And wolves protect their cubs with everything they have. It's not just a promise, Harry. It's instinct. It's magic deeper than anything the Ministry understands. To emphasize his point, Remus drew his wand and held it between them. I, Remus John Lupin, swear on my magic to protect and care for Harry James Potter as my own, to place his safety and well-being above all else, until he comes of age or beyond if he wishes it. So mote it be. A golden light emerged from his wand, encircling their joined hands before sinking into their skin with a warm pulse. Harry's eyes widened. What was that? A magical oath, Remus explained. Not quite as binding as an unbreakable vow, but significant nonetheless. Magic itself now recognizes my commitment to you. Could I make one too? Harry asked earnestly. Remus smiled. At your age, a simple promise is enough. Magic responds more to intent and emotion than to formal words, especially in children. Harry straightened his shoulders. I promise to be the best. What did you call me? Cub. Yes, Remus nodded. It's what a wolf calls its young. I promise to be the best cub ever, Harry declared seriously. And to help you on full moons and to learn everything you teach me. And I promise I'll never want to go back to the Dursleys, no matter what anyone says. Though no visible magic accompanied Harry's words, Remus felt something shift between them, a strengthening of the bond that had been growing since that first day at Privet Drive. That's a very good promise, he said softly. Now, shall we continue with our lesson? I believe we were discussing the fundamental difference between charms and transfiguration. Harry nodded, visibly relieved by their exchange. As they returned to their studies, Remus made a mental note to accelerate certain aspects of Harry's education, particularly in self-protection. The boy needed not just reassurance, but skills and knowledge to bolster his confidence. That evening, after Harry was asleep, Remus sent an owl to Dumbledore requesting additional protective enchantments and suggesting a meeting to discuss advanced defensive measures. Harry's fears weren't unfounded, after all. The Ministry hearing had placed them firmly in the public eye, and Malfoy's veiled threat lingered like a shadow over their newfound security. As he checked the wards before retiring for the night, Remus's enhanced senses detected a faint magical signature at the property boundary. Someone had been testing the defenses again, more subtly this time. He reinforced the perimeter spells, adding an alert that would wake him if anyone approached during the night. Inside, he paused at Harry's bedroom door, watching the small figure sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around a stuffed black dog Remus had transfigured for him. Despite the shadow of threats, despite the challenges his lycanthropy presented, despite everything, Remus felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where he belonged. This was what James and Lily would have wanted. I will keep him safe, Remus whispered to the memory of his friends. Whatever it takes. In his sleep, Harry smiled, as if he had heard the promise. Far from Godric's Hollow, in a lavish manor house, Lucius Malfoy sat before a fireplace, swirling brandy in a crystal glass as he stared at the evening edition of the Daily Prophet. The image of Potter and the werewolf, laughing together over ice cream, had been circling through his mind all day. "You seem troubled, husband," came Narcissa Malfoy's cool voice as she entered the study. "The Wisengamot verdict?" "An inconvenience, nothing more," Lucius replied smoothly. "The werewolf's guardianship is provisional. There will be other opportunities." Narcissa moved to stand beside his chair, her elegant fingers trailing across his shoulder. "The boy is the same age as Draco. Perhaps a different approach might yield better results." Lucius raised an eyebrow. "What do you suggest?" "Friendship," Narcissa said simply. "Or the appearance of it. We could arrange an introduction between the boys. Draco would be eager to meet the famous Harry Potter. Such connections formed in childhood can be influential." "Interesting," Lucius mused. "But Lupin will be suspicious of any overture from our family." "Then we work through intermediaries," Narcissa suggested. "The Wizarding Children's Primary Academy in Godric's Hollow has an excellent reputation. Draco could attend for a term or two, an educational experience broadening, we could call it. And if he happens to befriend Potter there." Lucius's lips curved in a cold smile. "My dear, your Slytherin mind remains as sharp as ever." "The Dark Lord valued subtlety as well as strength," Narcissa remarked. "If he returns, as you believe he might, having his greatest enemy's trust would be quite valuable." "Indeed." Lucius set down his glass and rose. "I'll make inquiries about enrollment procedures tomorrow." As Narcissa left, Lucius returned his gaze to the newspaper photograph. The boy looked so much like James Potter it was uncanny, yet those eyes. Those were Lily Evans's eyes, bright with a power Lucius remembered all too well from the few times he had encountered her in battle. "Enjoy your victory, werewolf," he murmured to the image. "It won't last." From a shadowed corner, a large raven watched with unusual intensity before taking flight through an open window, soaring into the night with purpose beyond that of an ordinary bird. The game was set in motion, pieces moving on the board. And Harry Potter, unknowing, stood at the center. Chapter 3, The Wolf's Trial. The summons arrived by Ministry Owl on a crisp September morning, just as Harry and Remus were finishing breakfast. The imperious bird dropped the heavy parchment envelope directly onto Remus's plate before departing without waiting for a treat, its official demeanor matching the seal on the letter. "Is that from the Ministry?" Harry asked, eyeing the envelope with apprehension. 6 weeks had passed since the provisional guardianship hearing, and they had settled into a comfortable routine at Potter Cottage. Remus broke the seal, his expression carefully neutral as he read the contents. "Yes. It seems our provisional arrangement is being challenged. We're required to appear before a special committee of the Wisengamot next week for a comprehensive review." Harry's spoon clattered against his cereal bowl. "They're trying to take me away, aren't they?" "They're trying," Remus confirmed, setting the letter aside. "But they won't succeed." "Is it because you're a werewolf?" Harry asked, his young face serious. "That's not fair. You're the best guardian ever." Remus smiled despite his concern. "Thank you for that vote of confidence. And yes, my condition is their primary objection. However, the letter mentions new evidence that must be considered." "What new evidence?" Harry frowned. "It doesn't specify." Remus rose from the table, mind already working through possible strategies. "But I suspect Lucius Malfoy's influence. He wasn't pleased with the outcome of our previous hearing." Harry nodded, remembering the cold-eyed wizard who had questioned him. "He reminded me of Uncle Vernon, but scarier and with better clothes." The assessment was so apt that Remus chuckled. "An excellent comparison. Both men certainly share a talent for polite cruelty." "What happens now?" Harry asked, pushing his half-eaten breakfast away. Remus moved to the kitchen counter, penning a quick note. "First, I inform Dumbledore. Then we prepare. This summons isn't entirely unexpected, we knew the provisional status might be challenged." He glanced at Harry, noting the worry in those green eyes. "We'll face this together, Harry, just like last time." "But what if they use magic to make me go back to the Dursleys?" Harry's voice was small. "Or somewhere else away from you." Remus finished his note and sent it off with their own owl before kneeling beside Harry's chair. "I made you a promise, remember? A magical oath. No one will take you away from me without a fight. And it would be quite a fight indeed." The hint of the wolf in Remus's voice seemed to reassure Harry more than any logical argument could have. He nodded, shoulders straightening slightly. "Now," Remus continued, "how about we move today's defense lesson earlier? I think it's a good day to practice shield charms." Harry's eyes lit up. While he couldn't perform proper wand magic yet, Remus had been teaching him the theory and movements, occasionally allowing Harry to try simple spells with his own wand under careful supervision. "Can I use your wand again?" he asked eagerly. "For practice purposes only," Remus agreed. "And remember, underage magic is generally prohibited, but the Ministry makes allowances for supervised educational purposes, particularly for children from magical families." Harry grinned. "And I'm definitely from a magical family." "Indeed you are," Remus confirmed, feeling the familiar pang whenever he thought of James and Lily. "A magical family with quite a legacy of exceptional defense skills. Your father was talented, and your mother was brilliant at protective charms." As they cleared the breakfast dishes, Remus's mind returned to the summons. The timing was suspicious, just as they were properly settling in, just as Harry was beginning to truly flourish away from the Dursleys' neglect. Someone wanted to disrupt their arrangement, and Remus had little doubt who was behind it. The cottage that had once been a crime scene, the broken home where Lily and James Potter had been murdered, had transformed over the past months. Though the damaged section remained sealed off, Harry wasn't ready to see his nursery yet, and Remus respected that. The rest of the house had become a true home. Magical photographs adorned the walls, books filled the shelves, and evidence of a happy child could be found throughout, drawings stuck to the refrigerator with chocolate frog cards magnetically charmed by Remus, a collection of interesting stones and feathers arranged on the windowsills, a child-sized broom leaning in the corner of the sitting room. In the garden, carefully tended flowers bloomed alongside magical herbs. A small vegetable patch, Harry's special project, produced slightly misshapen but enthusiastically grown carrots and tomatoes. The wild tangles had been tamed into pleasant walking paths, and a sturdy wooden bench sat beneath an ancient oak tree, a perfect spot for reading on pleasant days. It was here, on this bench, that Dumbledore found them that afternoon. He appeared with a soft pop of apparition at the edge of the wards, which admitted him readily as an authorized visitor. "Professor," Remus greeted him, setting aside the defense against the dark arts text he had been reviewing with Harry. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "The Ministry summons left little room for delay," Dumbledore replied, conjuring a comfortable chintz armchair before the bench rather than sitting on it. His long silver beard gleamed in the autumn sunlight as he smiled at Harry. "And how are you finding your studies, my boy?" Professor Lupin was always one of Hogwarts' more diligent students. Harry smiled shyly. "He's teaching me loads. I can already make a feather float without a wand, and we've been practicing shield charms today." "Most impressive," Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Starting on practical defense already?" "Wise, given the circumstances." Remus nodded. "Harry has a natural affinity for defensive magic. Like his mother." "Indeed." Dumbledore's expression grew more serious. "Which brings us to the matter at hand. The Ministry's summons is troubling, particularly the reference to new evidence." "Do you know what they're referring to?" Remus asked. "I have made inquiries," Dumbledore replied. "It seems Lucius Malfoy has been busy. He's gathered testimony from certain individuals regarding your condition and its supposed dangers. Most damning, perhaps, is a statement from one Fenrir Greyback." Remus went rigid at the name, a cold fury settling in his chest. Harry, sensing the change, looked up with concern. "Who's Fenrir Greyback?" he asked. Remus and Dumbledore exchanged a glance, silently debating how much to share. Finally, Remus spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "Greyback is the werewolf who bit me when I was a child, Harry. He's a violent, dangerous individual who, unlike me, embraces the most savage aspects of lycanthropy." "He bit you on purpose?" Harry asked, horrified. "Why?" "To punish my father," Remus explained, deciding honesty was best. "My father had offended Greyback, and in revenge, Greyback positioned himself near our home during a full moon. I was just 5 years old." Harry's small hand found Remus's, squeezing it in silent support. "That's horrible. He sounds evil." "A fair assessment," Dumbledore agreed gravely. "And one shared by most of Wizarding Society. However, his testimony against Remus's guardianship carries weight precisely because of his expertise on lycanthropy, however twisted." "What exactly is he claiming?" Remus asked, dreading the answer. "That no werewolf, regardless of precautions, can guarantee a child's safety," Dumbledore replied. "That the wolf's instincts grow stronger over time, eventually overwhelming human rationality. And specifically regarding you, Remus, he claims to have observed you during your time with Voldemort's werewolf packs during the war, allegedly witnessing behavior that contradicts your claims of maintaining control." "That's a lie!" Remus exclaimed, then modulated his tone, aware of Harry's attentive presence. "I was there as a spy for the Order. I never participated in their attacks." "You and I know that," Dumbledore said gently. "But the Wisengamot Committee may be swayed, particularly given Greyback's supposed expertise and Lucius's influence. Can't you stop them?" Harry asked Dumbledore, his young voice earnest. "You're important at the Ministry, aren't you?" Dumbledore smiled kindly at the boy. "I do hold certain positions of authority, yes. But the Wizarding legal system, like many systems, has checks and balances. I cannot simply overrule a properly constituted hearing, especially one concerning child welfare." "So what do we do?" Harry pressed. "We prepare," Remus answered. "We gather our own witnesses, our own evidence. We demonstrate that my condition is properly managed and poses no threat to you." "Indeed," Dumbledore nodded. "And I believe we should consider allowing Harry to provide memories for a pensive viewing. The committee would find it difficult to dismiss direct evidence of his time with both the Dursleys and with you, Remus." Harry looked confused. "Provide memories?" "It's a magical process," Remus explained. "Completely safe. It would allow the committee members to view specific memories from your perspective, how the Dursleys treated you versus your life here." "Would I forget the memories if I give them away?" Harry asked. "Not at all," Dumbledore assured him. "The process merely copies the memory. You retain the original." Harry nodded decisively. "Then I'll do it. I want them to see what the Dursleys were really like." Remus squeezed Harry's hand gratefully. "Thank you. But we'll only proceed if you're completely comfortable with the process. There's also the matter of character witnesses," Dumbledore continued. "Minerva has already volunteered, of course. I believe Phileas and Pomona would speak on your behalf as well, as former professors who can attest to your character." "What about the Dursleys?" Remus asked. "Will they be called to testify?" "Unlikely," Dumbledore replied. "Given the sensitive nature of the hearing and the involvement of magical law, the committee is focusing on Wizarding witnesses. The Dursleys' written statements from the previous hearing will be considered sufficient." They continued planning their strategy as the afternoon waned, Harry contributing surprisingly insightful suggestions from time to time. When Dumbledore finally rose to leave, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the garden. "One last matter before I depart," the old wizard said, reaching into his robes. "Given recent developments, I took the liberty of creating these." He handed what appeared to be 2 ordinary chocolate frog cards to Remus. "Emergency port keys, triggered by the password, Sanctuary. One for each of you, to be carried at all times. Remus examined the cards, feeling the subtle magic woven into them. Where do they lead? A safe house known only to me, Dumbledore replied. A precaution only, but one I felt prudent under the circumstances. Thank you, Remus said sincerely, handing one of the cards to Harry. Keep this with you always, cub. Just in case. Harry nodded solemnly, tucking the card into his pocket. What if they separate us at the hearing? They won't, Remus assured him, though the same concern had crossed his mind. Nevertheless, Dumbledore interjected gently, should you find yourself alone and frightened, Harry, the portkey will work for you. Magic recognizes intent, particularly in the young. After Dumbledore departed, Remus and Harry returned inside, the evening's chill driving them toward the warmth of the cottage. As they prepared a simple dinner together, a routine they both enjoyed, Harry remained unusually quiet. What's on your mind? Remus asked finally, as they chopped vegetables side by side. Harry hesitated, then asked, what was it like? Being with the werewolf packs during the war. The question caught Remus off guard. He considered deflecting but decided against it. Harry deserved honesty, even on difficult topics. It was grim, he admitted. Most werewolves in those packs had been rejected by Wizarding Society, left with few options beyond Greyback's twisted version of community. He promised them freedom, revenge against those who had shunned them, and Voldemort promised them legalized hunting of Muggles if he won. But you were different, Harry said, not quite a question. I was fortunate, Remus corrected gently. I had parents who didn't abandon me after I was bitten. I received an education at Hogwarts, thanks to Dumbledore's arrangements. And most importantly, I had friends, your father and mother, and others, who accepted me despite my condition. So you were spying on the bad werewolves? Harry clarified. Yes. I lived among them, pretending to share their views while reporting their movements to Dumbledore. It was difficult. I witnessed things I wish I hadn't. But I never participated in their violence, despite what Greyback claims. Harry nodded, seeming satisfied. I believe you. And I'll tell the committee that, too. Remus smiled, touched by the simple declaration of faith. Thank you, Harry. That means more than you know. They continued preparing dinner, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. But Remus's mind remained troubled. Greyback's involvement complicated matters significantly. The savage werewolf held a special hatred for Remus, whom he viewed as a traitor to their kind. If he was working with Lucius Malfoy, the danger extended beyond mere legal challenges to their guardianship arrangement. That night, after Harry was asleep, Remus strengthened the cottage's protective enchantments and added several new ones specifically designed to detect werewolves approaching the property. The next full moon was weeks away, but Remus took no chances where Harry's safety was concerned. The days leading up to the hearing passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Dumbledore arranged for a court-approved pensive extraction of several key memories from Harry, conducted by a neutral ministry official in their home. The process had fascinated Harry, who watched with wide eyes as silvery strands of memory were carefully drawn from his temple and placed in crystal vials. Wicked, he'd whispered, touching his head afterward as if to check everything was still there. In addition to practical preparations, they continued Harry's magical education with renewed focus on defensive techniques. Remus obtained special permission for these lessons, citing the unique security concerns surrounding the boy who lived. The wand movement is more of a sharp jab than a swish, Remus demonstrated, guiding Harry's hand through the motion for a basic stunning spell. Magic responds to intent as much as precision, but proper technique channels your magic more efficiently. Harry mimicked the movement with intense concentration. Like this? Exactly right, Remus praised. Remember, in a real situation, you'd combine the movement with the incantation, stupefy, while focusing your intent on temporarily incapacitating your target. Can I try it with your wand? Harry asked eagerly. Remus hesitated. Allowing a 7-year-old to practice actual stunning spells pushed the boundaries of what the ministry would consider educational. but given the potential threats they faced. On the practice dummy only, he decided, handing over his wand. And just once. The spell may be too advanced, so don't be disappointed if nothing happens. Harry took the wand reverently, his small face setting in determination. He faced the straw-filled practice dummy Remus had conjured, took a deep breath, and executed the movement with surprising precision. "Stupefy," he called, his voice clear and confident. To Remus's astonishment, a jet of red light, weaker than an adult's casting but unmistakably a stunning spell, shot from the wand and hit the dummy, which rocked slightly on its stand. "I did it!" Harry exclaimed, turning to Remus with a brilliant smile. "Did you see?" "I certainly did," Remus confirmed, masking his shock behind a proud smile. Most children showing early magical ability produced undirected bursts of accidental magic, not focused spellwork. "That was remarkable, Harry. Most first years at Hogwarts struggle with that spell." Harry beamed at the praise, carefully handing back the wand. "It felt right somehow. Like the magic knew what I wanted it to do." "That's precisely how it should feel," Remus nodded. "Magic is an extension of will and intent, guided by knowledge and technique." As they continued with the day's lessons, Remus made a mental note to discuss Harry's unusual magical aptitude with Dumbledore. Such precocious ability, particularly with defensive magic, suggested significant raw power, not surprising given who his parents were, but still noteworthy. That evening, McGonagall visited to help prepare Harry for the hearing. As his former professor, she had intimidated Remus well into adulthood, but with Harry, she displayed a gentler side, her stern facade softening as she explained what to expect. "The committee room is smaller than the full Wizengamot chamber," she told him as they sat in the cottage's cozy sitting room. "There will be 5 members seated at a raised platform, with you and Remus at a table before them. Will they try to separate us?" Harry asked, the concern that had plagued him since learning of the hearing. "They may question you privately," McGonagall acknowledged. "But I will insist on being present as an advocate if they do so." "You won't be alone, Harry." "What kinds of questions will they ask me?" "They'll want to know about your life here with Remus," she explained. "Your daily routine, your education, how full moons are handled. They may ask about the Dursleys for comparison. And they'll certainly ask your preference regarding guardianship." Harry nodded solemnly. "I'll tell them I want to stay with Remus. That he's the best guardian ever." McGonagall's stern mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "Your opinion carries significant weight, but be prepared for them to suggest your youth makes you unable to decide what's best for yourself." Harry's expression hardened with a determination that reminded Remus powerfully of Lily. "I'm 7, not stupid. I know when I'm happy and safe versus locked in a cupboard and half-starved." McGonagall and Remus exchanged a glance, both impressed by his articulation. "Indeed," McGonagall agreed. "Just remain calm and truthful, even if they ask difficult questions." After McGonagall departed, Remus found Harry in his bedroom, studying a photograph of James and Lily that usually sat on his bedside table. "They would have testified for you," Harry said without looking up. "If they were alive, they would have told the committee to let me stay with you." Remus sat beside him on the bed, his throat tight. "Yes, they would have. They trusted me with you, even knowing about my condition." "How do you know?" Harry asked, finally looking up, his green eyes searching Remus's face. Remus smiled sadly. "Because they asked me to be your godfather alongside Sirius. When they went into hiding, they discussed contingencies with both of us." "Then why didn't you get me right after they died?" The question held no accusation, only honest curiosity. Remus sighed, choosing his words carefully. "Several reasons, each inadequate in hindsight. There was confusion about who had betrayed your parents, we thought it was Sirius at the time. The Ministry was rounding up Death Eaters and anyone connected to Voldemort, including werewolves. And Dumbledore had already placed you with your aunt, citing blood protection magic that would keep you safe from Voldemort's remaining followers. But mostly because you thought I'd be better off without a werewolf for a guardian, Harry guessed perceptively. Yes, Remus admitted. I believed I couldn't provide the stability and safety you deserved. I was wrong, and I regret those years you spent with the Dursleys more than I can express. Harry was quiet for a moment, then leaned against Remus's side. It's okay. You came eventually. That's what matters. The simple forgiveness, so freely given, moved Remus deeply. This child, who had every right to resentment, instead offered compassion beyond his years. Now, Harry continued pragmatically, tell me more about what my parents were like. The committee might ask, and I want to get it right. Remus smiled, grateful for Harry's resilience. Well, your father was exceptional at transfiguration. By his 5th year, he had mastered human transfiguration well beyond OWL level. The morning of the hearing arrived with a crisp autumn chill. Remus woke early, his sleep having been fitful and plagued by dreams of losing Harry. He found the boy already awake and dressed in his formal robes, sitting at the kitchen table with a determined expression. You're up early, Remus observed, setting the kettle on for tea. Couldn't sleep, Harry admitted. I keep thinking about what I'll say to the committee. Remus sat across from him, noting the Potter's signet ring prominently displayed on Harry's finger, a deliberate choice, he suspected. Just speak from the heart, Remus advised. Your honesty is more powerful than any rehearsed speech. Harry nodded, fidgeting with his sleeve. Remus? What happens if they rule against us? It was the question they'd both been avoiding. Remus considered his response carefully. We have contingency plans. Dumbledore and I have discussed options. But Harry, I want you to understand something very important. He leaned forward, holding Harry's gaze. No matter what they decide legally, you will never go back to a situation like the Dursleys. I promise to protect you, and I will keep that promise, even if it means challenging the Ministry itself. The implications hung in the air between them, that Remus might defy the law to keep Harry safe. The boy's eyes widened slightly, then he nodded, a solemn pact sealed between them. They ate breakfast in companionable quiet before fleeing to Dumbledore's office at Hogwarts, a secure waypoint before proceeding to the Ministry. The headmaster greeted them gravely, his usual twinkling demeanor subdued. The committee has assembled, he informed them. Amelia Bones is chairing, which is favorable. However, Dolores Umbridge has been added as a late replacement for Tiberius Ogden, who suddenly fell ill this morning. Umbridge? Remus's heart sank. She drafted the anti-werewolf employment legislation last year. Indeed, Dumbledore confirmed. A concerning development, though not entirely unexpected given Lucius's involvement. They traveled to the Ministry via a secure Floo connection, emerging in a private antechamber rather than the public atrium. McGonagall was waiting for them, her expression tight with concern. They've decided to interview Harry separately first, she informed them without preamble. I've registered my objection, but they've invoked Special Procedure 19, citing potential undue influence from Mr. Lupin. That's ridiculous, Remus protested. Harry isn't being coerced. Nevertheless, it's been decided, McGonagall replied grimly. I'll accompany him as child advocate, and they've agreed to use a standard truth quill to record his statements rather than Veritaserum, which would be inappropriate for his age. Remus knelt to Harry's level, seeing the apprehension in his eyes. Remember what we discussed. Speak truthfully, and don't let them intimidate you. Professor McGonagall will be right there with you. Harry nodded bravely. I'm not afraid. Well, not very afraid anyway. A little fear is sensible, Remus smiled reassuringly. It keeps us alert. But you've faced worse than a committee of wizards, haven't you? Much worse, Harry agreed, thinking of the Dursleys. Uncle Vernon was scarier when he was angry. Mr. Potter, it's time, interrupted a Ministry official from the doorway. Harry squared his shoulders, looking suddenly older in his formal robes with the Potter ring gleaming on his finger. "I'll see you soon," he promised Remus before following McGonagall and the official. As they disappeared down the corridor, Dumbledore placed a comforting hand on Remus's shoulder. "Have faith, Remus. Harry is remarkably resilient and clear-minded for his age." "It's not Harry I doubt," Remus replied grimly. "It's a system that would separate a child from his guardian for questioning, particularly after what he experienced with the Dursleys." They were shown to a different waiting room, where they would remain until called. The minutes stretched into an hour, then nearly 2. Remus paced restlessly, unable to sit still as he imagined what Harry might be facing without him. Finally, the door opened to admit a grim-faced McGonagall, alone. "Where's Harry?" Remus demanded immediately. "Still with the committee," she replied. "I was dismissed after his testimony. They're deliberating whether to allow him to be present for the remainder of the proceedings." "That's outrageous," Remus growled, the wolf stirring beneath his skin despite the moon being weeks from full. "What happened in there, Minerva?" McGonagall's expression softened slightly. "Harry was magnificent, Remus. Composed, articulate, and utterly certain of his preference to remain with you. When Umbridge attempted to suggest you might have used magic to influence his opinions, he countered by asking why the same wasn't suspected of the Dursleys, who had him much longer yet couldn't make him prefer their care." Despite his anxiety, Remus felt a surge of pride. "How did they respond to that?" "Madame Bones seemed impressed," McGonagall reported. "Umbridge less so. The other committee members were difficult to read. They asked detailed questions about your transformations, how they're managed, whether Harry has ever felt unsafe." "And Harry's answers?" "Truthful and heartfelt," McGonagall assured him. "He explained the precautions you take, mentioned my presence during full moons, and even described helping care for you afterward, which he presented as a perfectly normal arrangement between family members who look after each other." Before they could discuss further, the door opened again to admit another ministry official. "Mr. Lupin, the committee will see you now," he announced formally. "Professor Dumbledore, as registered advocate, you may accompany him." "And Harry?" Remus asked. "Will he be returned to us?" "The committee has determined that Mr. Potter should be present for your testimony," the official replied neutrally. "He is waiting in the chamber." Relief washed through Remus as he and Dumbledore followed the official through the labyrinthine corridors of the ministry to a set of imposing oak doors. Beyond them lay a chamber smaller than the main Wizengamot courtroom but no less intimidating. 5 committee members sat on a raised dais, with Harry seated to one side, watched over by another official. The moment Remus entered, Harry's head snapped up, relief evident on his young face. Amelia Bones, a square-jawed witch with a monocle, presided from the central seat. To her right sat Dolores Umbridge, a short, toad-like woman with a pink bow perched atop her curly hair. The other 3 members Remus recognized as Wizengamot officials of varying political affiliations, one traditionally allied with Dumbledore, one known for neutrality, and one from the conservative faction often aligned with Malfoy. "Remus John Lupin," Bones began formally, "you appear before this committee to address concerns regarding your provisional guardianship of Harry James Potter. Be advised that these proceedings will determine whether said guardianship continues, is modified, or is revoked entirely." "I understand," Remus replied, taking the seat indicated at a small table before the dais. Dumbledore seated himself beside him. "Before we begin," Dumbledore interjected smoothly, "I must register my objection to the separation of guardian and ward for initial questioning, particularly given Harry Potter's history of mistreatment by previous guardians. Such separation could be traumatic and sends a concerning message about the committee's presumptions." "Your objection is noted," Bones replied evenly. However, the committee deemed it necessary to ensure the child could speak freely without potential influence. "Now, to the matter at hand." She turned her direct gaze to Remus. "Mr. Lupin, we have received testimony regarding your lycanthropic condition from multiple sources, including Fenrir Greyback, who claims intimate knowledge of your behavior during full moons based on observations during the Wizarding War." Remus maintained his composure with effort. Fenrir Greyback is a murderer and a devoted follower of Voldemort who specifically targeted me as a child to punish my father. His testimony is hardly unbiased. A slight ripple passed through the committee at Voldemort's name, but Bones remained impassive. Be that as it may, his expertise on lycanthropy is acknowledged in certain contexts. If I may, Dumbledore interrupted, expertise based on embracing the most savage aspects of the condition hardly applies to those like Remus who have spent their lives resisting such impulses. Indeed, Bones acknowledged. Which brings us to our primary concern. Mr. Lupin, how can you guarantee Harry Potter's safety during your transformations? Remus leaned forward slightly. I've implemented multiple safeguards. The cellar at Potter Cottage has been reinforced with containment wards designed by Professor Dumbledore himself. I secure myself there before moonrise, with Professor McGonagall staying with Harry upstairs. Additional wards prevent any sound from reaching Harry, protecting him from psychological distress. These precautions have proven effective for the past 3 full moons of our guardianship arrangement. Hem, came Umbridge's irritating cough. But surely, Mr. Lupin, you would acknowledge that no safeguards are foolproof? That the inherent danger of your condition presents an unacceptable risk to any child in your care, much less one as important as Harry Potter? From his seat, Harry made a small noise of protest, quickly silenced by the official beside him. Remus felt a surge of protective anger but kept his voice level. I would acknowledge that parenting always involves risk management, Madam Umbridge. However, the specific risk of my lycanthropy is one I've managed successfully since childhood. The precautions I've described have been reviewed by experts in both magical containment and werewolf behavior, and deemed more than adequate. Experts such as Umbridge pressed, her wide mouth stretching in an unpleasant smile. Albus Dumbledore, whose containment charms kept me safely at Hogwarts for 7 years without incident, Remus replied. Newt Scamander, who consulted on the specific needs of a transformed werewolf. And Damocles Belby, creator of the Wolfsbane potion, which I'll be able to access once the Ministry lifts certain restrictions on its distribution. This last point was a subtle jab at Umbridge herself, who had championed legislation limiting werewolves' access to the expensive potion that allowed them to retain their human mind during transformations. The Wolfsbane potion remains experimental, Umbridge countered. And prohibitively expensive for someone of your economic situation. If I may, Dumbledore interjected smoothly, Hogwarts has already arranged to provide the potion monthly to Mr. Lupin as part of our ongoing commitment to Harry's welfare. Professor Snape is quite capable of brewing it to the highest standards. Umbridge's smile faltered slightly. Nevertheless, the fundamental danger remains. A werewolf is, by definition, a dark creature. The law classifies them as XXXXX, most dangerous, for good reason. The law classifies transformed werewolves as dangerous, Remus corrected quietly. Human beings with lycanthropy are classified differently under the Being Division of the Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. A distinction I'm sure someone with your thorough knowledge of legislation understands, Madam Umbridge. A faint flush appeared on Umbridge's toad-like face, but before she could respond, the neutral committee member spoke up. Let us move beyond classification debates, he suggested reasonably. Mr. Lupin, beyond the full moon precautions, how would you characterize your guardianship of Harry Potter? What do you provide that other potential guardians could not? Remus considered the question carefully. I provide connection to his parents, first-hand knowledge of who they were and what they valued. I understand the unique challenges Harry faces as both a wizard and as the boy who lived. And perhaps most importantly, I provide continuity and stability after years of neglect and mistreatment. Could another magical family not provide similar benefits? The member pressed. The Wizarding Children's Services has received multiple offers from established, respected families willing to take guardianship. Let me guess, Remus replied, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from his voice. The Malfoys feature prominently among these offers. Among others, the member confirmed, unperturbed. Any guardian can provide material comfort, Remus said. But Harry needs more than that. He needs someone who sees him as Harry, not as the boy who lived. Someone who understands the specific trauma he's experienced and can help him process it. And yes, someone who knew his parents intimately and can share genuine memories rather than daily profit headlines. Umbridge interrupted again. Touching as this sentiment may be, Mr. Lupin, the fact remains that your condition places Harry Potter at risk each month. Additionally, your financial situation is precarious at best, which raises questions about your ability to provide adequately for a growing child. Remus was about to respond when Harry suddenly stood up, shrugging off the restraining hand of the ministry official. "That's not true," he exclaimed, his young voice ringing through the chamber. "Remus takes better care of me than anyone ever has. I have proper meals and clothes that fit and books to read. I'm learning magic and history and even Muggle subjects. And I'm never, ever locked in a cupboard or called a freak or a burden. Mr. Potter," Bones said firmly but not unkindly, "you must remain seated unless called upon to speak." "But they're not listening," Harry protested. "They're acting like Remus is dangerous to me when the only people who've ever hurt me were the Dursleys." "Harry," Remus called gently, "it's all right. Please sit down. The committee needs to consider all perspectives." Harry reluctantly returned to his seat, but his outburst had shifted the atmosphere in the chamber. Even Umbridge seemed momentarily taken aback by the child's passionate defense. "Perhaps," said the committee member aligned with Dumbledore, speaking for the first time, "we should view the pensive memories now. They may provide context that mere testimony cannot." Bones nodded agreement. "A sound suggestion. The committee will now review the memories provided by Harry Potter regarding both his previous living arrangement with the Dursley family and his current situation with Mr. Lupin." A court official brought forward a stone pensieve, into which he emptied the contents of several crystal vials. The silvery substance swirled, images occasionally rising to the surface before sinking again. "The committee will enter the pensieve collectively," Bones announced. "Mr. Lupin, Mr. Potter, and Professor Dumbledore will remain here under supervision until our return." The 5 committee members approached the pensieve, each touching the silvery surface and disappearing into Harry's memories. The moment they were gone, Harry rushed to Remus's side. "Did I mess everything up?" he asked anxiously. "I couldn't help it, they were being so unfair." "You didn't mess anything up," Remus assured him, pulling him into a quick embrace. "Sometimes committees need to be reminded they're discussing real people, not abstract concepts." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed, his blue eyes twinkling for the first time that day. "I believe your intervention was most timely, Harry. What memories will they see?" Harry asked, settling into the chair beside Remus. "The ones you selected with the ministry official," Remus reminded him. "Your life at the Dursleys, including the cupboard and their treatment of you, and some memories of your time with me, lessons, meals, bedtime stories, how we handle full moons." Harry nodded, remembering the extraction process. "Do you think it will change their minds? About you being dangerous?" "I hope so," Remus replied honestly. "Seeing through your eyes how we actually live should be more persuasive than theoretical concerns." They waited in tense silence for nearly 40 minutes before the committee members began emerging from the pensieve, one by one. Their expressions were difficult to read, though Umbridge looked distinctly displeased while Bones appeared thoughtful. "The committee will now deliberate privately," Bones announced once all members had returned. "Mr. Lupin, Mr. Potter, and Professor Dumbledore will wait in the antechamber until called for our decision." They were escorted to a small room adjacent to the main chamber, where refreshments had been provided. Harry immediately gravitated to a plate of chocolate biscuits, his appetite apparently unaffected by the stress of the proceedings. "How do you think it's going?" Remus asked Dumbledore quietly while Harry was occupied. "Better than expected," Dumbledore replied. "Amelia Bones is fair-minded, and the memories appear to have made an impression. Dolores remains opposed, of course, but I believe we may have swayed the neutral member." "And if the decision goes against us?" Remus pressed, keeping his voice low. "The contingency plans we discussed. "Are in place," Dumbledore confirmed with a subtle nod. "Though I remain optimistic they won't be necessary." The wait stretched for over an hour. Harry, having exhausted the entertainment value of biscuits, was now leaning drowsily against Remus's side, the emotional strain of the day catching up with him. Remus kept an arm around the boy's shoulders, drawing as much comfort from the contact as he provided. Finally, the door opened. "The committee has reached a decision," announced the ministry official. "Please return to the chamber." Harry straightened immediately, sleep forgotten. They followed the official back to the committee room, where the 5 members had resumed their seats on the dais. Their expressions gave little away, though Umbridge's smug smile sent a chill through Remus. "Remus John Lupin," Bones began formally, "this committee has considered all testimony, including the pensive memories provided by Harry Potter, in the matter of your guardianship. We have deliberated at length, weighing the unique circumstances of this case against established law and precedent." She paused, adjusting her monocle. "The committee acknowledges the clear bond between you and Harry Potter, as well as the significant improvement in his welfare since leaving his Muggle relatives. We also recognize the extensive precautions you have implemented regarding your lycanthropic condition." Remus held his breath, feeling Harry tense beside him. By a vote of 3 to 2, Bones continued, "This committee has decided to uphold your provisional guardianship with the following modifications. First, you will be required to use Wolfsbane potion for all transformations, with verification by a ministry official. Second, monthly welfare checks will continue for a full year, rather than the quarterly checks previously ordered. Third, Harry Potter will undergo quarterly health examinations at St. Mungo's to ensure his continued well-being." Relief flooded through Remus, so powerful he nearly missed Bones's next words. "However, we also recognize the legitimate concerns raised regarding contingency planning. Therefore, as a fourth condition, you must designate a secondary guardian, approved by this committee, who would assume care of Harry Potter should you become incapacitated or otherwise unable to fulfill your duties. This secondary guardian must not share your condition." "Minerva McGonagall," Remus said immediately. "If the committee finds her acceptable." Bones nodded. "Professor McGonagall has already been suggested and preliminarily approved. She will need to submit formal paperwork confirming her willingness to serve in this capacity." "Thank you, Madam Bones," Remus said sincerely. "These conditions are more than reasonable." Hem, Umbridge interrupted, clearly displeased with the outcome. "I must register my strong dissent to this decision. The committee is setting a dangerous precedent regarding dark creatures' access to children, particularly one as nationally significant as Harry Potter. The Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures should have final authority in such matters." "Your dissent is noted, Madam Umbridge," Bones replied coolly. "However, the majority has ruled. The modified provisional guardianship will continue for 1 year, after which a final determination will be made regarding permanent arrangements." As the formal proceedings concluded, Harry could no longer contain himself. He threw his arms around Remus in a fierce hug, unconcerned with protocol. "We did it," he whispered excitedly. "We get to stay together." "Yes, we do," Remus confirmed, returning the embrace, his heart full despite the conditions imposed. They were reasonable precautions, after all, and nothing he hadn't already considered himself. As they prepared to leave, Umbridge approached, her wide mouth stretched in what might charitably be called a smile. "Enjoy your arrangement while it lasts, Mr. Lupin," she said sweetly. "The Werewolf Registry Office will be watching your case with particular interest. Any slip, any missed dose of Wolfsbane, any incident, however minor, well, we wouldn't want anything to jeopardize dear Harry's safety, would we?" "Is that a threat, Dolores?" Dumbledore inquired pleasantly, appearing beside them. "Merely a reminder of our department's vigilance, Headmaster," she replied, unruffled. "After all, the boy's welfare is everyone's primary concern, is it not?" With a final simpering smile, she waddled away, pink bow bobbing with each step. "She doesn't seem very nice," Harry observed once she was out of earshot. A masterful understatement, Dumbledore agreed, his eyes following Umbridge's retreating figure. Dolores Umbridge has rather fixed views about what constitutes a proper wizard, and I'm afraid Remus falls outside her narrow definition. Well, I think she's wrong, Harry stated firmly. And so do most of the committee, or they wouldn't have voted for us. Indeed, Dumbledore smiled. Now, perhaps we should depart before the press descends. I believe they've been kept at bay thus far, but news of the decision will spread quickly. They left through a secure ministry exit, avoiding the public atrium where reporters had indeed gathered. Operating to the boundaries of Potter Cottage, they walked the final distance in companionable silence, each processing the events of the day in their own way. At the garden gate, Dumbledore paused. I believe this is where I leave you. You both could use some rest after such a trying day. Thank you, Albus, Remus said sincerely. For everything. Yeah, thank you, Professor, Harry added. For helping us stay together. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. I merely provided support, Harry. The strength of your bond with Remus did the rest. Though I would be remiss not to mention that your eloquent defense in the chamber may have swayed at least one vote. After Dumbledore departed, Remus and Harry entered the cottage together. It felt different somehow, more securely there's now that the ministry had officially, if conditionally, approved their arrangement. So now what happens? Harry asked, collapsing onto the sofa with the dramatic exhaustion only children can muster after prolonged good behavior. Now we continue as we were, Remus replied, sinking into his favorite armchair. With a few minor adjustments for the ministry conditions. But essentially, we carry on building our life together. And nobody can take me away. Not without significant cause, Remus assured him. And I don't intend to give them any. Harry nodded, satisfied, then asked more hesitantly, what about that man who testified against you? The bad werewolf who bit you when you were little? Remus tensed slightly. Greyback's involvement was troubling on multiple levels. Fenrir Greyback is dangerous, yes, but he's also closely monitored by the ministry. It's unlikely he'd risk direct action against us. But if he did? Harry pressed. Then he would discover that I am far more formidable than I was as a 5-year-old child, Remus replied, a hardness entering his voice. And that I have powerful allies who would respond immediately to any threat. Harry seemed reassured by this, and the conversation shifted to more pleasant topics, plans for dinner, tomorrow's lessons, a book Harry had been reading. By the time they prepared for bed, the stress of the day had largely dissipated, replaced by quiet contentment. As Remus tucked Harry in that night, the boy asked sleepily, do you think my parents would be proud of how we handled the committee? Without a doubt, Remus replied softly, smoothing Harry's perpetually unruly hair. Your mother would have particularly appreciated your passionate defense. She never could stay silent in the face of injustice either. Harry smiled at the comparison, his eyes already drifting closed. Good night, Remus. Good night, cub, Remus replied, watching as Harry slipped into sleep, the Potter signet ring still on his finger. He had refused to remove it all day, a silent statement of his heritage and identity. Leaving Harry's room, Remus performed his nightly ritual of checking the wards, reinforcing where necessary and adding a few subtle new protections. The ministry's decision was a victory, yes, but it had also heightened their visibility. Umbridge's veiled threat, Greyback's involvement, Malfoy's machinations in the background, all indicated that while one battle had been won, the war for Harry's future continued. But for tonight, they were safe. Harry was officially, legally his to protect and nurture. And Remus would ensure that remained the case, no matter what challenges arose. The aftermath of the hearing unfolded over the following weeks. The Daily Prophet ran a surprisingly balanced article detailing the committee's decision, though Rita Skeeter's accompanying opinion piece, Werewolf Guardian, Progressive Step or Perilous Precedent, was less restrained. Wizarding wireless network programs debated the ruling, with opinions divided largely along political lines. Through it all, Remus maintained their routine, providing Harry with the stability he needed. Lessons continued in the mornings, covering both magical and Muggle subjects. Afternoons were often spent outdoors, flying lessons in good weather, explorations of the magical forest near Potter Cottage, or visits to nearby wizarding locations under careful disguise. 2 weeks after the hearing, they received an unexpected visitor. Augusta Longbottom, the formidable grandmother who had spoken in their favor during the first Wisengamot hearing, arrived unannounced one crisp October morning. Madame Longbottom, Remus greeted her at the door, somewhat bemused. "This is a surprise. I don't believe in owling ahead," she declared, sweeping past him into the cottage, her infamous vulture-topped hat barely clearing the doorframe. "Gives people too much time to prepare false impressions. Where is the boy?" "Harry's in the garden, harvesting herbs for a potions lesson," Remus replied, gesturing toward the back of the cottage. "May I ask the purpose of your visit?" Augusta fixed him with a shrewd look. "Social integration, Mr. Lupin. The committee was correct about one thing, the boy needs interaction with peers his own age. I've come to invite him to meet my grandson, Neville. They're the same age, and both have suffered losses in the war. I believe they might benefit from each other's acquaintance." Remus was momentarily speechless. The Longbottoms were an old, respected pure-blood family. For Augusta to reach out like this represented significant social validation of his guardianship. "That's very kind of you," he managed finally. "I'm sure Harry would enjoy meeting a boy his own age." "It's not kindness, it's practicality," Augusta corrected briskly. "The boys will be year-mates at Hogwarts. Better they form their own impressions of each other now, before others can influence them. Besides, Neville could use a friend who doesn't flinch at the mention of the war. Too many wizarding parents pretend it never happened, leaving their children ignorant and unprepared." Before Remus could respond, Harry appeared from the garden, a small basket of freshly cut herbs in his hands. He stopped short at the sight of their visitor. "Harry, this is Madame Augusta Longbottom," Remus introduced. "She was one of the Wisengamot members who supported our guardianship at the first hearing." Harry approached politely, setting aside his basket. "Thank you for helping us, ma'am." Augusta surveyed him critically. "Well-mannered, at least. Though you need a proper haircut, you look like your father after a Quidditch match." Despite her brusque tone, there was a hint of warmth in her eyes. "I knew your parents, boy. Not intimately, but well enough. They stood with my son and his wife in the Order of the Phoenix." "Your son, ma'am?" Harry asked curiously. A shadow crossed Augusta's face. "Frank Longbottom. He and his wife Alice were Aurors, and members of the Order alongside your parents. They were tortured into insanity by Death Eaters shortly after you-know-who's fall, leaving their son, my grandson Neville, in my care." Harry's expression sobered immediately. "I'm sorry. That's horrible." "It was," Augusta agreed bluntly. "But neither pity nor vengeance brings them back. All I can do is raise their son to honor their sacrifice, just as Mr. Lupin is raising you to honor yours." She turned back to Remus. "Saturday next. 2 o'clock. Bring the boy to Longbottom Manor for tea. Neville has a fine greenhouse that might interest Harry, given his evident interest in herbology." She nodded toward the basket of herbs. "We'd be honored," Remus replied, recognizing the social significance of the invitation. "Good. The Floo address is Longbottom Manor, Augusta's study. Don't be late. I despise tardiness." With that, she swept toward the door, pausing only to add, "And don't concern yourself about the full moon. I'm well aware it falls the following week. We're not all Umbridges, Mr. Lupin." After she departed, Harry turned to Remus with wide eyes. "She's a bit scary." "Augusta Longbottom has that effect on most people," Remus agreed with a smile. "But her support is significant, and her grandson might indeed make a good friend for you." "What happened to his parents?" Harry asked soberly. "She said they were tortured." Remus sighed, leading Harry to the kitchen table where they could sit for this difficult conversation. After Voldemort's defeat, some of his most fanatical followers were hunting for information about what had happened to him. The Lestranges, a married couple and the husband's brother, along with a young Death Eater named Barty Crouch Jr., attacked the Longbottoms, believing they had information. Did they? Harry asked. No, Remus said sadly. Frank and Alice knew nothing more than anyone else. But the Death Eaters tortured them with the Cruciatus Curse, a torture curse, until their minds broke. They've been in St. Mungo's hospital ever since. Alive, but unable to recognize even their own son. Harry was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this. So Neville's like me. His parents were taken away by bad wizards too. Yes, Remus nodded. Though in some ways, his situation may be even harder. Your parents are gone, which is terrible, but final. Neville visits parents who don't know who he is. It's a different kind of grief. I'll be nice to him, Harry promised solemnly. Even if he's shy or anything. Everyone needs friends. Remus smiled, touched by Harry's empathy. That's very thoughtful, Harry. And yes, I think friendship might benefit both of you. The visit to Longbottom Manor that Saturday proved enlightening. Neville Longbottom was indeed shy, painfully so, but he blossomed when showing Harry his greenhouse. Harry, for his part, showed genuine interest in Neville's plants, particularly when Neville explained their magical properties. This one's called Mimbulus Mimbletonia, Neville explained, pointing to an ugly, pulsating cactus-like plant. It's really rare. Uncle Algy got it for me from Assyria. If you poke it, it squirts stink sap everywhere. Brilliant. Harry enthused. Does your gran let you do experiments with the plants? Sometimes, Neville replied. If I'm careful. She worries I'll hurt myself. From the terrace where they sat with tea, Augusta and Remus watched the boys' interaction. Your grandson has quite a talent for herbology, Remus observed. Professor Sprout will be delighted when he reaches Hogwarts. Humph, Augusta sniffed. I'd rather he showed his father's aptitude for transfiguration or dueling. But I suppose plants are better than nothing. Different talents, not lesser ones, Remus suggested gently. Herbology requires patience, attention to detail, and intuitive understanding of magical properties, all valuable skills. Augusta gave him a shrewd look. You sound like a teacher, Lupin. I might have been, in another life, Remus admitted. Had circumstances been different. Circumstances can change, she replied cryptically, sipping her tea. Particularly if certain legislative efforts gain traction. Before Remus could inquire further, the boys returned from the greenhouse, Neville shyly showing Harry a bloom he had carefully cut for him, a magical flower that changed color with the weather. It's blue now because it's clear outside, Neville explained. But it'll turn purple if it's going to rain, and yellow for snow. That's amazing, Harry said, genuinely impressed. I've never seen anything like it. You can take it home if you want, Neville offered, then quickly added, I mean, if that's all right, Gran. Certainly, Augusta nodded. A host gift is entirely appropriate. The visit concluded with plans for a reciprocal one to Potter Cottage the following month. As they prepared to leave, Augusta drew Remus aside. The boy seems well adjusted, she observed. Better than my Neville in some ways, despite your unique circumstances. Harry is remarkably resilient, Remus agreed. And determined to learn everything he can about the magical world and his place in it. Augusta nodded approvingly. You're doing well by him, Lupin. I'll make that known in certain circles where it matters. The implication was clear, Augusta Longbottom's social influence would be used to support their arrangement. It was an unexpected but welcome alliance. The next full moon approached with new complications. Under the Ministry's modified conditions, Remus was required to take Wolfsbane potion and submit to verification. Snape had agreed to brew the complex potion, delivering it personally the week before the transformation with barely concealed disdain. The ministry requires verification of consumption, he had drawled, placing the steaming goblet on the kitchen table. I am to witness you drinking each dose for the 3 days preceding the full moon. How delightful for both of us, Remus had replied mildly, drinking the foul concoction without complaint while Snape watched with narrowed eyes. On the night of the full moon, a ministry official, thankfully not Umbridge, arrived to verify the final dose and inspect the security arrangements. McGonagall arrived shortly after, prepared to stay with Harry as usual. All appears to be in order, the official declared after examining the reinforced cellar and the multiple layers of magical containment. I will return in the morning to verify your transformation occurred without incident. Once the official departed, Remus knelt before Harry, who had been watching the proceedings with solemn eyes. Remember, this transformation will be different because of the wolfsbane, he explained. I'll keep my human mind, even in wolf form. I won't be dangerous to myself, so you needn't worry about injuries tomorrow. Harry nodded. But you still have to be locked in, right? Even with the potion. Ministry regulations, Remus confirmed. And it's safer regardless. The potion isn't foolproof, and we can't take chances. I wish you didn't have to be alone, Harry said quietly. Something in his tone caught Remus's attention. Harry, you're not thinking of trying to see me during the transformation, are you? Because that would be extremely dangerous, potion or not. No, Harry assured him quickly, too quickly, perhaps. I know the rules. Stay upstairs with Professor McGonagall. Don't try to check on you. Wait until morning. Those rules are for your safety, Remus emphasized. Promise me you'll follow them. I promise, Harry replied, his expression suddenly earnest. I won't try to see you tonight. Remus searched his face, then nodded, satisfied. Good. Now, I believe Professor McGonagall brought a special transfiguration lesson for you this evening. Something about turning teacups into tortoises. Harry's excitement at the prospect of advanced transfiguration theory temporarily eclipsed his concern about the full moon, and Remus left him chatting animatedly with McGonagall about the principles involved. The cellar had been prepared as usual, reinforced walls, cushioning charms on the floor, multiple locking and silencing spells on the door. Remus removed his clothes, folding them neatly on a shelf, and sat cross-legged on the floor to await the transformation. Unlike previous full moons, his mind remained clear and present even as the physical pain of transformation tore through him. Bones cracked and reformed, fur sprouted across his skin, his face elongated into a muzzle, but through it all, he remained Remus, not the wolf. The wolfsbane potion was working as intended. Once the transformation completed, the wolf's body housing Remus's human consciousness settled onto the cushioned floor. Without the wolf's mindless rage driving him to self-harm, the night stretched before him empty and long. He curled up, intending to sleep through as much of it as possible. Some hours later, a soft sound from the cellar door caught his attention. His enhanced hearing detected whispered voices, one unmistakably Harry's, the other McGonagall's. Just for a moment, Harry was pleading quietly. I just want to see that he's okay. You said with the potion he keeps his mind, so he's not dangerous. It's not about danger, Harry, McGonagall responded firmly. It's about dignity. Professor Lupin values his privacy during transformations. But, no buts. I understand your concern, but we must respect his wishes. Now, back upstairs. It's well past your bedtime. Retreating footsteps indicated Harry's reluctant compliance. Remus, in wolf form, felt a complex mixture of emotions, touched by Harry's concern, grateful for McGonagall's intervention, but also troubled by Harry's persistent interest in seeing him transformed. It wasn't mere curiosity, he sensed, but something deeper, perhaps a desire to understand this part of Remus's life that remained separate and hidden. Morning brought the painful reverse transformation and the promised ministry inspection. The official noted with approval the undamaged state of both the cellar and Remus himself. The wolfsbane appears fully effective, he observed, making notes on an official form. And the containment measures held as expected. A successful transformation, by ministry standards. After the official departed, Remus made his way slowly upstairs, wrapped in a dressing gown, to find Harry waiting anxiously in the kitchen. The boy's face lit up at the sight of him. "You're not hurt," he exclaimed, rushing forward. "The potion really worked." As expected, Remus confirmed, easing himself into a chair. Though the wolfsbane had prevented self-inflicted injuries, the transformation itself always left him exhausted and aching. "Though I'm still in need of rest and chocolate, as usual." Harry immediately produced both, a blanket he had ready on the sofa, and a large bar of Honeyduke's finest. "I made tea too," he added proudly. "Professor McGonagall showed me how to heat the water properly with magic. Well, I watched while she did it, but next time I can try." Remus smiled, accepting both offerings gratefully. "Thank you, Harry. You're becoming quite the caretaker." As he sipped the tea, Remus debated whether to mention Harry's attempted visit to the cellar. After consideration, he decided transparency was best. "I heard you at the cellar door last night," he said gently. "With Professor McGonagall." Harry's cheeks flushed red. "I just wanted to see if you were okay. I wasn't going to open the door or anything." "I understand the curiosity," Remus said. "But there are good reasons I prefer privacy during transformations, beyond the obvious safety concerns." "Because you don't want me to see you as a wolf?" Harry guessed. "Because you think it would scare me?" "Partly," Remus acknowledged. "But also because transformation is intimate, in a way. Vulnerable. It's not something I share easily, even with those closest to me." Harry considered this seriously. "I wouldn't think differently of you," he said finally. "If I saw you transformed, I mean. You'd still be Remus to me, just in a different shape." The simple acceptance in Harry's voice moved Remus deeply. "Thank you for that, Harry. Perhaps someday, when you're older, we might revisit the discussion. But for now, I need you to respect the boundaries we've established." "I will," Harry promised, more sincerely than the previous night. "I'm sorry I tried to sneak down." "All forgiven," Remus assured him. "Now, I believe you have an essay on the properties of moonstone to complete while I rest." Harry groaned theatrically, the serious moment passing. "Can't I have the day off too? Since it's the day after full moon." "Nice try," Remus smiled. "But education continues, moon or no moon." As Harry reluctantly gathered his study materials, Remus settled on the sofa with his tea and chocolate, reflecting on the night's events. The wolfsbane made a significant difference, not just physically, but emotionally. For the first time since childhood, he had experienced a transformation without the terror of losing himself to the wolf's mind. It was, in its way, liberating. Yet challenges remained. Umbridge and her faction would continue looking for reasons to revoke his guardianship. Greyback's involvement in the hearing suggested darker forces at work beyond mere bureaucratic opposition. And Harry's natural curiosity about his condition needed careful management, a balance between honest education and appropriate boundaries. But for now, watching Harry settle at the kitchen table with his books, there was a measure of peace. They had weathered the ministry hearing. They had completed another full moon with proper precautions. They were building a network of allies, starting with the formidable Augusta Longbottom. And most importantly, they were continuing to build their life together, day by day, establishing the family unit that both of them had been denied for too long. Outside, autumn leaves danced in the wind, golden and crimson against a clear blue sky. The damaged section of Potter Cottage remained sealed off, a project for another day, when Harry was ready to face that particular ghost. But the rest of the cottage had truly become their home, filled with books and laughter and the everyday magic of a child's life unfolding as it should have all along. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the wolf and his cub, building their own pack one day at a time. Deep in the forests of Albania, far from the cozy domesticity of Potter Cottage, a darkness stirred. Whispers among certain magical creatures spoke of a shadow that possessed small animals, leaving their bodies withered and dead after departure. Local wizards dismissed the tales as superstition, but those sensitive to dark magic avoided certain parts of the forest entirely. In a manor house in Wiltshire, Lucius Malfoy received an unusual message, delivered by a raven that was not quite a raven. The bird's eyes held an intelligence beyond that of any natural creature, and the message it brought caused the normally composed wizard to pale visibly. "So soon," he murmured to himself. "We are not yet prepared." The bird watched him with unnerving intensity before taking flight once more, its purpose fulfilled. Lucius moved to his study, locking the door with multiple charms before opening a hidden compartment in the floor. From within, he retrieved a small, nondescript diary, its black cover unmarked except for the faded name, T.M. Riddle, on the back. He placed it on his desk, staring at it contemplatively. The diary had been entrusted to him by the Dark Lord himself, with instructions to guard it with his life. Lucius had assumed it contained valuable dark magic, perhaps forbidden spells or secrets that might restore the Dark Lord's power should he fall. But the message from Albania suggested the diary might serve a more immediate purpose. "The boy must be removed from the werewolf's influence first," Lucius muttered to himself. "The groundwork is laid. Umbridge and her faction will continue their opposition. Greyback can be manipulated further. And now, perhaps, the Longbottom connection offers another avenue." His musings were interrupted by a knock at the study door. "Lucius," came Narcissa's voice. "Draco is asking about the Wizarding Primary Academy again. Have you made inquiries as I suggested?" "Yes, my dear," Lucius called back, quickly returning the diary to its hiding place. "I've arranged an interview next week. The headmistress was most accommodating when I mentioned our interest in broadening Draco's social connections before Hogwarts." "Excellent," Narcissa replied. "I'll inform Draco. He's quite excited about the prospect of meeting other magical children his age." As her footsteps receded, Lucius sealed the hidden compartment and removed the locking charms from his study door. The plan was proceeding as intended. Draco would attend the small wizarding primary that served Godric's Hollow and surrounding magical communities, the same school where, according to his sources, Lupin intended to enroll Potter once the Ministry's scrutiny lessened. Children made useful, unwitting spies. And should the opportunity arise for more direct interference, well, children were also remarkably adaptable when properly motivated. Lucius smiled coldly, moving to the window where the raven had departed. Events were accelerating, pieces moving into position sooner than anticipated. The boy who lived might have survived the Dark Lord once, might have found a temporary haven with the werewolf, but his respite would prove short-lived. Forces beyond his comprehension were gathering, connections forming, plans advancing. And in the forests of Albania, a shadow grew stronger, more purposeful, more determined to reclaim what had been lost on that fateful Halloween night in Godric's Hollow. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.